Follow us on Instagram at One Mic Show, and we are also now on TikTok. So follow us on TikTok. We're also taking live calls tonight. The number to call is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. So save that number. Now, later tonight, we'll be taking a critical look at the role of diaspora in the rapidly changing political scene in Kenya, where we'll be asking, should the diaspora support maybe, or where should the diaspora support start, and at what point must we draw a line on the unfolding events in Kenya? Do diaspora protests have an impact back home? So feel free to start dropping comments below in the comment section and let us know if you've been part of any diaspora protests across the US, and tell us what you think. Na bila kusahau, napokea mziki toka DJ wetu machachari mleta habari DJ Moshfire ambaye ameingia ndani ya building leo, na tutadunda kule viwanjani na Mika Ot yake nambari 7 mgongoni akituletea habari za michezo. Na moja kwa moja toka Kilimanjaro Studios ni mimi mtangazaji na mwanahabari wako mpendwa Ali Badawi. Kwetu wananiita mteule na wengine mniite mjukuu wa Masai, because I'm Kenyan by blood, American by design, Masai by choice. Sichagui, sikagui na sibagui. Karibuni.
Now, let's talk politics.
Now, in this politics hour, we'll be talking about President Ruto's surprise dissolution of the cabinet and its implications. In studio to discuss this is DC-based environmental and social justice organizer Dr. Nathan Wangusi. He'll be talking about Ruto's limited options. He'll also be talking about the recalling of subservient members of parliament. Dr. Wangusi will also tell us why diaspora must remain politically engaged in preparation for the 2027 elections. Now, please drop a comment below and tell us where you're tuned in from. Kama uko Dallas, kama uko Houston, kama uko DMV, kama uko Baltimore, ata kama uko 254, please drop a comment down there and let us know. And I'm your host and producer, Ali Badawi. And it is Friday the 13th of July, and we are streaming live from Kilimanjaro Studios outside Washington, D.C. Now, please remember to follow the One Mic Show on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we are now on TikTok. So please make sure you follow us on TikTok. Actually, on TikTok right now, I think we have more followers in Kenya than we have in the US. So at US mezembea kidogo, so ingedi TikTok mtufuate pale. We're going to drop the link down there. And on panel with me tonight is Mr. One Mike Kamakawa. Our sports anchor Mika Ot will be joining us via Zoom. And our truant, errant boy, resident DJ Moshfire is live in the building tonight. And also not forgetting that our super producer is none other than Mubelwa Wabandio. And before we get started, I can see, quite a number of comments coming in here. I can see people are excited about Anguka Nayo, the music that has been playing. I can see Branyamu is in the building. Branyamu karibu sana. I can see Arthur K. Ochieng is in the building. Brenda BK all the way from Houston, Texas. Brenda karibu sana. Sleo Dwar all the way from Dallas, Texas. Karibu sana. Akinya Doyo all the way from Houston, Texas. Karibu sana. Washeke Lirangu all the way from San Antonio, Texas. Karibu sana. Afro-Jamaican Kaiser Soze all the way from Canada,
Texas.
Toronto.
Oh, sorry.
Karibu sana. Texas is overrepresented in this building. Watu wa Baltimore sijui kwa wapi. Watu wa Maryland, watu wa Virginia. I don't know where you all. Texas, like kudos to Texas, because Texas is always very heavily represented on the One Mic Show. Atlanta, mko wapi? Where are you? And remember, to tag all your friends. Remember to tag at everyone at highlight like Afro-Jamaican is doing there. Tag all your friends. It's an easy way of tagging all your friends and letting them know that we have started Melia Envy the People's Kamkunji Imengoa Nanga.
Ali watu wa DC wako hapa naona niko na vala hapa.
Okay. All right.
On YouTube.
Okay. Oh, watu wa DC washaingia.
Naona.
Okay, sawa. Na hiyo link ya YouTube pia muisambaze, muishare so that everybody knows that we're in the building. Hello people on YouTube. We will be looking at your comments. And one day, like when we figure it out, our social media manager told us now we are good to go live on TikTok. Apparently, you can do TikTok. Now, TikTok lives, they can even last 24 hours. So I don't know whether we're also going to be going on TikTok live. Ama sijui kutaendaje huko. But yes, na huyo ni Mika hapo pia ambaye is
ameanguka nayo.
Yes, and we're going to get started right away because kama kawaida there was so much that happened in Kenya that we don't even know where to start. Now, you know that anti-government protests that led to over 40 deaths in Kenya in the last few weeks are still dominating global headlines. In a remarkable twist of fate, President William Ruto yesterday yielded to pressure from Gen Z activists and dissolved his entire cabinet. Now, this follows a campaign that started online and went through a dramatic occupation of parliament, leading to the fatal shooting of protesters. Then, in an effort to cool temperatures, The president attempted a handshake with Azimio leader Raila Odinga, but the attempts for dialogue was soundly rejected by the leaderless Gen Z movement. Now, in studio tonight to discuss this is a former aspirant of the Langata Parliamentary seat, Dr. Nathan Barasa Wangusi. Now, Dr. Wangusi is an environmental and social justice organizer based in DC and has been involved in the last two protests at the Kenyan embassy out here in Washington, DC. He's been on different US and Caribbean media houses, giving non-Kenyans a perspective on what's happening in Kenya. Now, Dr. Wangusi is also part of the organizing team of an upcoming protest at the IMF headquarters in DC next Saturday, the 20th of July. Now, Dr. Wangusi, karibu sana to the One Mic Show.
Asante.
All right. Now, Dr. Wangusi, how have you been feeling and coping for the last few weeks, just to get us warmed up and to get us started?
Yeah, so it's been a whirlwind of activity. I think for most observers and political pundits, the events that have gone on in Kenya have been not just unique, but have changed significantly over the last couple of weeks, right? So it started obviously with a couple of months ago with the rumors about a finance bill that was going to be very contentious. It was in the media. It was in the social squares on social media, and then a finance bill was passed. It went through the first sets of readings, and just like that, a whole generation poured into the streets of Kenya to protest this bill.
Okay.
It was unique in the sense that it was unexpected. In fact, the first response from government officials, so like the MPs who were saying, for instance, that apparently Gen Zs are Cerelac babies. They are going to show up in Ubers, drinking
eating KFC,
water, eating KFC. We didn't expect that of them. How have we coped here in the diaspora? It's to watch and see how we can support this effort. Many of us have been excited, but also scared, because we know, and from what we've seen, they are putting their lives on the line to fight for the soul of Kenya.
Okay, sawa karibu sana Dr. Wangusi to the One Mic Show studios. And of course, we're going to be discussing all this, but I want to come to the panel real quick before we continue the conversation. I'm going to start with the truant boy who's been away. DJ Mochfara, karibu sana to the One Mic Show. How have you been coping?
With being away or with?
With everything, with being away, with what's happening in Kenya. Kila kitu.
Sungali sema hivyo. Yani yake Mungu, you guys. Do you tumia ngeli ya kivi? Okay, sorry. So, yeah, it's been, if I think back to the times that we grew up in, or should I say that I grew up in, and the president who was sitting, and what happened to people who protest, it's scary. But these Gen Zers do not give a flying flip. They don't care, and then they don't have a measuring stick. It's like they don't have anything to measure with. You can't tell them sijui kuna Nyati house, sijui kuna Nyayo house, sijui utafinywa, sijui wapi, sijui nini, nothing. And they've gotten to the point where they feel zero. And that saying of punda imechoka, wamechoka. And looking on from the outside, I'm like, wow, how watu wamechoka. And honestly, I think if we were in Kenya, we probably would be on the streets with them. And it's true, they're not restrained by the same fears that our parents we saw it. We saw it. You saw the government machinery come into play the minute that you were dissident. And even in school, if you remember, whenever you had a riot in school, if something happened in Shule, the guys who led the riot or who were supposedly the ringleaders, they snapped on those people, they jumped on them, and that was it. But you know what has happened is Gen Zs are using a very different mode or model of protest, which I think the government is failing to respond effectively to. So our security institutions are designed to pursue ringleaders. Right? Someone you can find and touch. Someone you can find and touch, and they're not there to be found and that was their first response, right? So immediately this protest spilled into the streets. The president's first speech, and I think that was the most telling speech that he's given all through, he says that apparently these kids are
criminals.
Treasonous criminals.
And
Correct.
There's a saying that when you want to, when a hyena wants to eat its young, first it accuses them of smelling like goats.
Okay.
Right? So you create,
You set up the environment.
you set up the environment, you start to justify this kind of police operation, then you deploy. And when these guys have gone out, they've got a hold of some social media influencers, assuming that because they have many followers, because they are also using certain types of language on social media, that these are the people who are the ringleaders, but only to find that, wait, it's a completely decentralized protest.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
young people are coming out on their individual terms to make a statement. And I think what they've kind of said here is that you can't kill us and lead us.
Correct.
And then second, you can't kill all of us.
Yes.
You can't completely,
They're the,
wipe
they're
out
the,
a whole
they're the
generation.
majority.
They're
Yeah.
the majority, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and of course we're definitely going to get back to that. I'm going to come to Mika shortly, but before I get to Mika, I already see comments are coming down here, thick and fast, all the way from San Antonio, Texas, and from Dallas, Texas. I see Washeke here is saying there has been a political awakening in Kenya, and this is an enlightened awakening. We have Kenyans all over, even in Mashinani, quoting the Constitution in its entirety. Now, Slave from Dallas says, I love the revolution. Also, it's sad that there are people who are being kidnapped and some being tortured to death. This is not acceptable. We have to keep applying pressure till they get it right. And then Washeke comes back again and says, we can't sell them lies or fears anymore. And since we bequeathed them hopelessness, poverty, and unemployment, they have nothing to lose. Mika Och, talk to us. Tell us what's going on from your side and how you've been coping with all these things happening in Kenya. Mika.
Anguka nayo. Wewe. That is what I've been doing. Anguka nayo ndio nikianguka nayo. But then for me, one thing I'm seeing and one thing I'm liking is that there is a separation of politics, how it was known and how it used to be. And we've had so many times people saying that Wakenya ni waoga, Wakenya hawezi toa fujo kama countries zingine. Na countries zingine like kama Arab Spring, how it was like Wakenya hawezi fanya vitu kazi. So we've had people comparing Kenya, saying Kenyans and cowards and everything. But then what we realize is that we didn't have to do all that. What these kids have showed is that you didn't have to do all that. It's just you having a common cause that you believe in and you recognize and you feel it's something you're fighting for your right. No matter what happens, no matter what you do, you are not going to stop a movement like this, a movement that's coming from deep within the heart, a movement that's being caused by real socio-economic issues. And then what actually worked against the government, and by this time I'll not even say government, I'll just say the whole politician, is number one first, is that the generations before have always had this thing of classism inside it. Like, I'll give you an example. I'll use music. Reggae was music for people in the ghetto. Vernacular music was for what we shall go. People who come from the other side, from the western side of Uhuru Highway, used to listen to hip hop. And then jazz was for the classiest and then so there was, and you could see it even to a point whereby when Kenyan music came into the scene, once the haves decided it was uncool, it was quite easily for it to go away, and that's why other music came in and took, because it was cool to listen to that music, it was well and understandable. Now, if you look at this generation of these kids, akuna toka Runda, akuna toka Kayole, watu sikiza Abantu. So they speak the same language. Their lingo is the same. From Runda to Kayole, their lingo is the same. Doesn't matter where they live. Their lingo is the same. The Sheng they're going to speak is the same English they're going to speak. Everything is the same. They have no separation for them. So for them, they relate to each other as a generation. And for them, that issues are the same. Even the people who come from rich families do understand that they don't have anything. They don't have a future. They don't have, like, if my parents were to leave right now and this was gone, I don't have any other way, because they don't have any, there's nothing to show them that they're getting a country that's going to help them. Mm-hmm. And all of them understand creativity. All of them understand the internet where they use as their meeting place. They use it to their advantages on making money and doing stuff. So they have one common understanding to them. Their platforms are theirs, and they mingle as one. So for them, they are protecting their country for themselves, for their so they have that bond holding them. And unfortunately, this other group kina Omoj na sisi wengine wetu, since we've been raising that, not looking together, it was very easy to disperse us. Maandamano zilikuwa za watu wa ghetto, wanalipwa 1,000 wakalewa wakarusha mawe. The middle class were like, you are spoiling business for us. What did these kids do? They came out peacefully, all of them. And they told their parents, stay home. They told the older brothers, stay home. The older sisters, stay home. We're going to do this.
Okay.
Right? And they've been doing it. They're organizing themselves. Like they're going for protests. They have medics, all of, as if they know what they're doing. So for me, what, let me not take a lot of time. For me, what I just want to say is that this should be a lesson, not only for Kenyan, but for all other countries, because this is everywhere in all these other countries. This generation speak the same word. So it's supposed to be a lesson for the older generation that it's time we either fix our differences and work towards our betterment, or watch our own children kick us out of the house.
Okay, asante sana Mika Ochino, like very nice submission hapo. Now, before we come to Mike, Washeke here is saying, and the arguments, that's the Gen Zs, are based on facts. They have all the data of debt and corruption. Kenya Doyle from Houston says, best part is the intergenerational conversations, which is very good. And then Stephen Batty from Sambaza podcast, also from Dallas, says this revolution is one for the ages, third liberation on the way. Washeke says Viva is to the third revolution. It's an exciting time to be Kenyan. And then of course up kwa YouTube namwona Stephen Okot says, I actually think those bodies being discovered may be the straw that brings this Ruto house down. Uno Mike, what have your thoughts been as all these things have been happening?
I think for the longest time while doing the show, we've always tried to champion, we've tried to push civic education.
Yes.
That has been, I think, our our clarion call. When the masses, when Wanjiku gets to understand the Constitution, gets to understand what their rights are, gets to understand and know that waheshimiwa who are now watumishi, that they are not waheshimiwas, they are watumishi.
Watumishi, yes.
Then and only then, I think we will make that turn. And we've made the turn.
So the turning point is here.
It is here.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a long time.
Yeah, like Washeke has been saying, because remember, we've been saying we need to have civic education. People need to understand the Constitution. People need to understand the budgeting process. We talk about it even when we're addressing about the very fast, well, not the very fast, but the last, not the 2023-2024 finance bill. And the introduction of the taxes. We're like, okay, what is the budgeting process? Housing levy. So how do you go about it? And Jimmy Wanjigi, again, he was going out and educating people on the process,
step by step.
Because guess what? It is right there. It is for you to learn. It is part of the Constitution. It is part of, it's just governance.
Yes.
So the turning point arrived. As Washeke is saying, when you're in the Twitter spaces or when you're talking to people, people are now understanding what the Constitution is. Chapter 6,
yes,
recall, IEBC, the constituting the IEBC. Now you're understanding how e-game inachezwa. Certain bills, when Sifuna was talking about how there was something, EACC was talking about
the conflict of interest,
and they're like, no, we did not do that. This is what it says. What we did was we put this together, we made it make sense. Like, people are getting to understand that.
Yes.
And the turning point has come.
So the turning point has come.
Yes.
Quickly before we go back to our guest, Dr. Wangusi, Kenya Doyo here is saying, Dito Mika, they challenge outdated societal structures for sure. Now, Dr. Wangusi, I go back to you, and just to get a brief sense of what has now culminated in the dissolution of the cabinet and the resignation of the Inspector General of Police. Maybe take us through the last few weeks, from where this started to the culmination. And this is still an ongoing, it seems like it's an event, just when you think it's over, then something happens.
A new chapter.
Yeah, so you had started talking about it earlier. So just take us briefly through how it all started to where it got us here, especially for our non-Kenyan viewers who are listening to us.
Yeah, let me start by saying this, that the President, William Ruto, is a victim of his own success. He's also a victim of the Constitution. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the history of this president and how he's come up through the political ranks, he started as pretty much as a henchman on the Y2K.
Mutia Bukono.
Alikuwa Mutia Bukono, and he even says it himself.
Yeah,
he was a handler. He was a fixer. The Y2K legacy is very checkered.
And for the younger audience here who maybe don't understand what Y2K.
For 24 years we were ruled by under a single party state called
YK. I think you meant
Kano.
YK.
Young Kano 92.
YK 92.
YK 92.
Youth for Kano 92.
Youth for Kano 92. But for 24 years we were ruled by under a one party state. A section of the constitution was amended that gave
Section 2A.
Section 2A, the famous Section 2A. So for 24 years we're under this rule. In 1992, the country was reopened for multi-party elections. Now, Youth for Kano 92
YK92.
Youth for Kano 92 was an outfit that was formed by the ruling party at the time to get the young people out to vote and to be involved in the political process. What it quickly became was a militant wing of the ruling party that was sent actually after political dissidents or opposition. So they organized not just raids but also attacks on other political entities. And this guy came through the ranks as a fixer in that outfit. Fast forward to 2007, he's caught up in what nearly became a civil war in Kenya. And accounts of this are highly varied, but we know that he ended up at the ICC for his role in fomenting what was alleged ethnic cleansing in Kenya. And then he survived that, ended up in government, and then there's been scandal after scandal. One in particular that was very personal for me was the Langata Road primary school protest. There was a protest called Occupy Playground, where apparently he was trying to get, they say it's a powerful government official, but he's the owner of this hotel, which was trying to annex a school playground, and kids protested. One of the things I saw at that protest, I happened to be very close to it because I lived close by. Other adults ran there, and I happened to be one of the people that ended up at that scene. But one of the things that I saw there, and I remember talking about this several times to people that I knew who were working in government, I saw a very informed and fierce generation of young people, of kids. So people at that time were pitting these children, but then they were very forceful, and they took back their playground from...
These are primary school kids.
Primary school kids.
Yeah.
Who are these people today? Those were the Gen Zs. They were a subset of who we are seeing occupying parliament today, right? So, back to this question about the social consciousness of this generation and the shared value systems about what is right and what is wrong and what is acceptable, what isn't, that other generations don't seem to, have. They don't have the same restrictions, the same fears. They don't even have the same fear that we have of the police. And we saw that behavior in full display during Occupy Parliament. The reason I'm saying the president is a victim of his own success is that he made these promises, very kind of grandiose promises about social change and economic transformation that he was going to implement in Kenya during his campaign. And then he's not done any of that. Instead, he's going to sell Kenya to the highest bidder, to the IMF. He's taken our young Gen Zs to Haiti for a peacekeeping mission that has nothing to do with Kenya's security interests, but a cash sale. So all these things that he's kind of set himself up for have brought him to this week, this last couple of weeks, where people have discovered, wait, this guy is hoodwinking the public. He's not honest. He's not giving us the facts. When he gives the numbers, he's kind of cooking them on the fly. He's a political showman. He's not there to speak on behalf of the people. He's speaking for his own interests. So I think the context I look at this is Ruto is just a victim of his own successes, but also a victim of the constitution, which we've just been talking about, where young people have actually picked up that book and looked at what it actually says. And I'll finish by saying this. The preamble of our constitution, the first couple of lines, says sovereignty is vested in the people. In other words, you need consent of the governed for you to actually set up a government. So he's only now realizing that he's subservient. He's the second arm of government. The people are the first arm of government. I'll hand it back to you, Ali.
Yes, I mean, this is quite interesting, the historical perspective you've given us, which I think, a lot of people will benefit from, like understanding, and even going back, because you started in Youth for Kanu 92, and he's called himself a hustler in 1997. Like when some of our listeners here were not born, he was already a member of parliament.
And in fact, he was my member of parliament in Eldoret North.
Eldoret North, yeah. He was able to defeat, I think it was Ruben Chesire.
Yes.
Yeah, who was the member of parliament before. Yeah, he was a very powerful guy.
Yeah, he was Moi's person.
Yes, so he was Moi's person.
In fact, I think, I don't know this for a fact, but I think he was actually Moi's relative.
So
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I full disclosure, I went with the son to school, so I'll try not to talk about that.
About which one? The son, Kule Moi forces. Sorry.
No. Don't worry about that. That's classified information. But but generally speaking, he was a member of parliament since 1997. Never lost an election, and that's the reason why sometimes you're told failure can be something very good. So he's never failed politically. He's always won all elections.
I was even going to say, he even broke the curse of the vice president. No vice president has made it to the presidency,
yes.
Other than actually Moi, who it was because of the death of Kenyatta.
Yeah, it was because of the death. No vice president has ever been elected
as the president.
Yeah. He's the first one to do it.
I was going to take you back, and then I remembered he came in and he was not. He was not sitting in power when he ascended.
Yes, he was not sitting in power, but
yes.
later on,
Correct.
Of course, he got elected. He also got elected as president. But make up real quick. So that just bringing that historical perspective is, I think, very important to tie. And I think there's lessons also that we can also, historical lessons that the Gen Zs, the leaders of this revolution, can use, because at the time before YK92 was formed, there was Sabasaba, there was agitation for multipartism. The Gen Zs of that time were the ones who were out in the streets, and the odds at that time were much worse. They were far much worse than right now.
Yep.
Of course, right now we have the abductions going on, we have the killings, but at that time, if you're taken away, there was no social media,
no cameras,
no
CCTV,
there was
a phone that you can snap a picture. Maybe you might be able to even have your phone on record and send it out.
So things were much more dangerous, and what ended up, diluting that revolution was now young people were brought into the fold in YK92. They were given a lot of money, and they were brought to of course, to do the fix-it jobs, and also to neutralize, these other young people,
peers,
who are coming out, and that's something that we have to be on the lookout for. On this revolution, those young people being bought, which is why I like the way this leaderless revolution is quickly dismissing people who have become traitors or have done something, against what their ideals are. Yes, because that's how people started getting bought one by one, and then all of a sudden things got diluted. Mika, you wanted to say something, then we're going to continue.
Actually, what I wanted to say is that another thing that actually really cooked the goose for this government is how the leaders were behaving. Most of these leaders, some of them, is the first time having holding legislative office. Majority of them, what you love, even if the first or the second time, majority of them are what you say are new in the political game. It became quite hard, whereby there's this thing in social media right now. Everybody wants to perceive that they're living a soft life. Everybody is showing off, is doing whatever they're doing. Now you see, when a country is suffering and basic government necessities are being taken away, but then you see young leaders coming in and they're living a life of opulence, whereby they're living. You see somebody coming in who's a politician, who's pays in the public. It's known how much it is, but that guy is bowling more than an NFL player who's played in the NFL for more than 10 years and who's signed a few $100 million contracts. Then people start looking at you and wondering, where is this money coming from? You see a politician showing off 6 cars, a G-Wagon, a Range Rover, Rolls-Royce Phantom. Others have bought choppers that a politician always flies from. There's one who flies from Eldoret to Nairobi to come to Parliament and goes
every
back
day, yes,
with a personal chopper, right? And then people are looking at this and they're wondering, you're telling us there's no jobs to hire us. There's no money to hire us. There's no university fee to be paid. There is no healthcare fees to be paid. Linda Mama is being taken out of it. Then you want to tax us more. You want to tax even our little income that we're making in our own in our own different out of the way process of doing it. So it makes it easy. We can say that he failed from his successes, but also he failed from his arrogance. When you have a bunch of thieves around you and you don't put them in check because you're benefiting, let's not try to pretend like he's not benefiting from all the looting that is happening. Then we have your daughter walking around and lecturing other Kenyans like she is their prefect or their firstborn. You have your wives bringing washed out pastors from America and walking around in the world like they're supposed to be saving people from their own pockets. It is going to bring a problem. And then all you and the deputy seem to do is like you're fighting for who's going to steal the bigger cake. It is going to bring a problem. So I will say, yes, they won the elections, and they assume that since we've already won the elections, we run a country of stupid cowards and idiots, and let us just do whatever we want to do. What they forgot is that the same constitution, which they purport to be the one that is guiding them to work, and which I believe a lot of these legislators have not read it. They do not understand even what this constitution says, is the one that is putting them in check right now. And that is why you see every day they're trying to gaslight and talk to the protesters and tell them, oh, go back, let's have dialogue, let's do this. No, it's not time for dialogue. You had 2 years to show what you can do. You're not showing it. It was simple. They were told not to vote. If they would have not voted for that finance bill, we would not have been here. But their arrogance is what brought us here.
Okay. Asante sana Mika for that submissions. The arrogance is what brought us here. Couple of comments here real quick before we get back to this conversation. I see Stephen Bati here, Sambaza Podcast, asking, did you guys watch or listen to Spice FM this morning with guest Albino Ayuel Abong, special envoy from Sudan? The conversation was interesting.
That very interesting. That guy broke it down.
Yeah, as he talked about the Gen Z movement being hijacked, but this dude gave like 7 to 8 African examples of African countries who had a leaderless movement that was taken over. It was a nice conversation. So I personally didn't watch it, but I will make sure I go watch it. And then I see Esther Mulusa here from North Carolina says, I am so of Gen Z. It makes me proud to be Kenyan. Finally, there is a genuine call to action for social and economic justice. And then we have Adhiambo Dak from right here in Maryland says, Gen Z have summoned the GHC subject to be GH and mandatory civics. Going forward, Schools have to teach the civics, constitution, critical thinking, finance, integrity, and human rights are separate subjects. So proud and thankful for them and their stance on principles. And then Adhiambo Father says, Luther must go. That rhymes with someone I know. Dorian Florence here says, power belongs to the people. Slay says, power to the people. We have Evans Marube says, Ruto playing Moi's playbook in wrong times when we relied on telephone booths and KBC for news. And then and Evans, you're going to tell us about telephone booths for news. You up or Mili Nipita? But I'd like to know more about it. Now, Akinya Doyo says, kuongeza, the president's questionable personality. Gen Zs have also been able to unpack the entanglements of colonial remnants, recognizing the system itself as the trap. Not yet Uhuru, inabidi tusaidiane and see what indigenous wisdom we can draw from. Then Stephen JJ from Dallas pia anasema hiyo ya won the elections niko kwa fence hiyo wafungue sava. And then Washeke says, yep, and shedding the chains of religion, which works to maintain the status quo in order to stay relevant. Esther Mulusa says the Gen Silent and baby boomers were affected by the colonial trauma. Gen X were brainwashed by the Kenyatta and Nyayo era dictatorship. Gen Z and millennials have no hangovers of absolute dictatorship. Their world is a global village, and they don't subscribe to intimidation and manipulation. They don't trust authority. The internet has broadened their minds. That's Esther Mulusa all the way from North Carolina. And then hapa Stephen JJ anasema sikio mkio mtata, the election is at the constituency. Hiyo Bomas bure kabisa. And then Esther Mulusa is telling us, I am in Shimalavandu, Kakamega right now. So not in North Carolina, but in Shimalavandu, Kakamega. So asante sana hapo Esther Mulusa. Yes,
only one thing on,
sure.
On a dark statement comment. Do you know the funny thing is that these Gen Zs are kusoma civics, hiyo GHC.
Yes, that's the most interesting thing that I think, Mika, we're going to talk about a bit later. They're all self-taught. That was taken away. It was taken away. There's something called social studies. I don't know whether that's where civics is taught.
Kwani ile kitabu ya James Osogo ilienda?
So GHC litolewa. You know, the number of subjects were reduced, but I think that's something that
there's
we're
no
talk about.
There's no civic education in Kenya right now in whatsoever way. So the way as we were taught about civic education, who's your local MP, or who's your local, no, they don't learn that.
But now
they never learned that.
But now you see what we were taught, who's your local MP, who's your local provincial commissioner. That is not civic education, and I think that's what we were taught.
That's conditioning. That's what we were taught. We knew how but at least we knew the arms of government. We knew the arms of government, how government was. We knew there was a legislature. We knew there was a the legislature.
Judiciary.
What is the other one?
Legislature, judiciary,
and executive.
Judiciary,
yeah. But I remember.
At least we had that. We were taught that hierarchy. We knew this is the hierarchy of government, how it is.
Now I remember.
We are already self-taught.
I remember we were being taught the provincial commissioner of Nairobi is Fred Waiganjo. That I remember, and the provincial commissioner for Rift Valley was Yusuf Haji at that particular time. And these are people like Yusuf Haji. They went on to become powerful politicians. But I want to remind the listeners that you're tuned into the One Mic Show. Now I'm your co-host and producer Ali Badawi, aka Mjukua Masai. And in studio, we have DC-based environmental and social justice organizer, Dr. Nathan Wangusi. Now, Dr. Wangusi is a former parliamentary aspirant, Langata constituency, and is part of a team that's organizing another protest next Saturday, the 20th of July, at the IMF Global Headquarters in DC. He's also been doing media rounds on non-Kenyan media, talking about the ongoing Gen Z revolution in Kenya. We'll shortly be talking about what President Ruto must do in the next few weeks for his presidency to survive. So stay tuned for that. Our lines are open. Number to call, 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. So feel free to call in. Again, the number is 202-683-4570. Press *5 to speak. We're going to be looking at the phone lines shortly. So feel free to call in if you have, a comment, anything you want to say, or a question to Dr. Wangusi, or a question to anyone in studio. But before we continue, Dr. Wangusi, please give us some details of the upcoming protest at IMF HQ2 in DC, which is going to be on the 20th of Saturday, the 20th of July, which is next week Saturday. So talk to us a little bit about that before we continue.
Okay, so one of the main stakeholders in the finance bill, in fact, I'm surprised that this finance bill was not called the IMF bill. The main stakeholder in that finance bill is the IMF, because they are the ones who have pushed this so-called structural adjustment programs to the Kenya government, so that they either qualify for new financing rounds, or so that they can meet their debt obligations, or so that they can conform to the global financial architecture. Kenyans have been asking questions varying from what is the IMF. It's the International Monetary Fund. It's just basically a big bank that issues concessionary and other types of loans to governments to do development work. And if you think of your own finances, the global financial architecture is designed very similarly, where you have credit ratings or credit risk around governments. So what they've basically done is they told the Kenya government that you're not meeting your debt obligations. You need to implement certain structures or certain policies for you to be able to actually raise enough money to meet your debt obligations and to be sustainable as a country. What the Ruto regime then did is that they took those instructions and went and generated this finance bill that is egregious in every way, taxing everything from consumer goods like bread to healthcare services, which is a bit unusual, like cancer treatments, life-saving cancer treatments, to sanitary towels and sanitary pads, the kind of commodities that Kenyans use on a day-to-day basis. The most egregious for me, and this is fundamental to our sovereignty as a people, were the taxes on land. Because then what you're doing is you're essentially putting the Kenyan land markets on the global, for the highest bidder. That meant
Correct.
I could literally lose my ancestral home. And if you know Kenya, people may have large parcels of land, or they might have parcels of land that they own, but they are not using them for productive use. Land does not have to be used for productive use. Some of it is culturally owned. Some of it is
it's
for
generations.
For generations, a place for us to go back to. And back to this question about what is important for the diaspora. There is nobody you meet in the Kenyan diaspora, and we are in the millions. By last check, we were almost 3 or 4 million Kenyans in the diaspora. No one you meet who says they are not planning to go home, either to retire or once they've kind of finished their
Ali has
rounds.
been going for a while.
Yeah. So this kind of programming of our finance bill by an international organization on the invitation of the president. This was not something that just happened. That doesn't happen unless someone endorses it at a very high level. There was an axis between the IMF and the president's administration to say, hey, we are going to do this to Kenyans. And the natural, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Finish.
So
Finish
our natural response to that, or this kind of punitive taxes, is to resist. And that's what Kenyans, particularly from the Gen Z, who are mostly affected by these taxes, did.
But here's a quick question. Here's a quick
resist.
question, that I think some people want to understand.
Yeah.
What's in it for the president or for the ruling administration if they accept these punitive conditions from the IMF? What's in it for them personally, to the point where they had to push it, regardless of whether people in public participation say this or that? What's actually in it for them?
Yeah, and we've been talking about this sort of from a different perspective.
Yeah.
What is called budgeted corruption.
Okay,
right?
and explain that.
You have certain line items in a budget, and a budget it's very similar to what you do when you budget at the beginning of the month for your groceries, food, etc. They have certain budget lines in the finance bill, in the now defunct finance bill, allocating money to like unconstitutional offices, allocating money to dark funds that government should use.
Undisclosed expenses that they didn't want to be.
That they don't want us to know what this money is actually being used for. and then allocations that go to government departments, and then in conjunction with other legislation like what we were talking about regarding the conflict of interest bill, that these government officials can then bid for work from either government departments, state agencies, or ministries to actually siphon that money out of government, because there's the number of ways in which you can steal from government these days has reduced. One of the other things that I wanted just to quickly point out before you continue was something that was kind of said widely in the media about money not going to the right places when it's being collected. We have what is called the consolidated fund. This is basically the government's bank account. So all this money is supposed to go to one place, but then in the Kenyan government, not just at the local and or the national level, government departments have several bank account collection accounts that don't have the same level of scrutiny from the relevant government agencies. So what is in it for them? It's budgeted corruption.
So is the money that comes from the IMF, and I'm going to a very basic level, you know, so that people understand, the loans that IMF gives us, is that the money that goes towards this so-called budgeted corruption? Because I think there are people who are questioning, why are you blaming the IMF? Does the IMF give loans to Kenya and stipulate that this money is for XYZ, or is it an open loan? You know, like just like when you go to a bank, you can either get a car loan where you specifically have to purchase a vehicle and the bank will make sure, or a home loan, or you can just get a personal loan where they just give you cash and you can go gamble in a casino.
It's not for discretionary spending. That's the development finance is never for discretionary spending. The kind of you know, I'm going to just take this money and use it to do what I want.
But does the IMF has a way of enforcing?
It does. It does, and I'll tell you why. So the structural adjustment programs are supposed to give guidelines on what they expect the government to do. Right? They're going to just loosely say, and on top of that, they also have, you know, leverage, political leverage to actually make governments use this money responsibly. But then they don't do that. Instead, they just say, hey, you know, it's, you know, some of the money is going to go into like anti-corruption, but then there's no follow-up from the powers that be to make sure that this money is not then being budgeted for corruption. Okay. So when the finance bill was written, they didn't criticize it, right? Although it had gaping holes that even our Gen Zs could see, right? They continue to kind of support that process and validate what government is doing.
Okay, and then before we come to Nomai, because I think Nomai also has a question and some comments here coming in. What is in it for the IMF? Why would you want to keep lending money to someone who you know is in a critical condition in terms of their ability to pay you back because they have a lot of debt? But what incentive does the International Monetary Fund have to want to keep pushing this money in a situation where we know, you know, like a very big part of our revenues are going towards debt payment? Because even a bank, ikiangalia credit report yako and they realize that you have a lot of debts, they will deny you a loan. So what's in it for the IMF to want to keep pushing this money?
So think about development finance institutions. They have a limited set of clients to work with. How many countries are there in the world? 180?
I think 190 something.
194. Unlike a bank, you can kind of expand the number of clients you have. These development banks have a limited set of people to work with. So it is in their interests to keep you in debt, to entrap a country in a debt spiral.
Okay.
Right? Because there's not going to be another East African country. There's Kenya, there's Rwanda, there's Uganda, there's Tanzania. There are no other countries, right? So debt entrapment is part of their modus of operation. They don't want these countries to be debt-free, because then they don't have any business. In fact, Kenyans, in their typical fashion, started saying, you know, why don't you even set up a pay bill for us to pay these bills ourselves? That's what Gen Zs are saying. And in fact, it's not a far-fetched idea, by the way. It is not a far-fetched idea if Kenyans, you know, went out there and said, we are going to pay this debt ourselves, because apparently the government is not making these payments on time. At the same time, if we don't pay them now, we're going to stay
The next
entrapped.
generation, yes.
We hand over the debt to the next
Yes,
generation.
to the next generation. And if there's interest, then there's exchange rates behind it and all sorts of other things. And if you haven't met those deliverables, then there's punitive stuff that comes in. We don't know what type of agreements they have signed. You know, there's rumors that at sometimes even there's key installments or amenities that are being signed over without you realizing that they're being signed over. Maybe it's concessions for a port. Or, I mean, there's been all sorts of different rumors that are tied
It's not
to
rumors,
this.
Mosh, it's true. They come for minerals and infrastructure that you control. We all know that they want Manda Bay. That is not a secret.
The US.
They want it, and they want it very bad. And those are some of the things that they will use to negotiate.
Yeah.
There are rumors about minerals in Kenya, and these are rumors that have been there for so long. Right now, people say that you cannot go to like Magadi and take a picture, or even just get close to it. They will chase you away. So people are wondering,
That is true, actually.
Is salt that protected that you can't even take a picture? And it's one of the most beautiful places.
Yep, that's where I was born. That's where I was born.
and let me-
Mjukuu Masai. That's where I was born, Magadi.
Yeah, let me just tie in with what you're saying with respect to how these loans are used to leverage national resources, right? So our country has both mineral resources. We have land. We have resources that are valuable on the open market, right? On the global market. So if you can't make your payments, and they say, oh, the future revenues or the future export revenues from salt or from
Coffee
or from the oil reserves that you have can be bonded for that purpose. This is what the IMF do. To me, it's our new form of colonization that I'm eternally grateful for Gen Zs for seeing through and protecting our sovereignty.
Okay, good. We're going to come back to the statement that the spokesperson of the IMF made about Kenya.
Yep.
I think this was yesterday. You're going to be talking about that. And then I'm going to come to you, Uno. Just let me quickly read some comments here. Washeke says IMF equals payday loaner. And then Akinyi Adoyo says, Mimi, when they explained the finance bill to in the Luo, I changed my generation to Z. Nasirudi huko Jenzenu anguka nayo. And then I see Washeke here saying, like issues on the finance bill, like the housing levy. Stephen JJ says it should be for development only. That's the money that comes from the IMF.
When you borrow.
Yes. And then Evans Marube says IMF loan and micromanage you. IMF loan and micromanage you. They did with Moi too. Kibaki and Uhuru preferred Chinese for loans. Stephen JJ says, but our constitution says we should only borrow for development. Yeah, that's very correct.
Correct.
And then DJ Sunny Sistuk is in the building and says Mika's picture finally changed. That shows how many weeks DJ Sunny Sistuk has been skipping the show.
No, Sunny has been on the road. Sunny has been on the road, but you guys cannot.
No, but you can still watch the show on the road. We have truck drivers.
But on the road during our
even
show.
While DJing,
So now on a loose Friday, kule kepfia mulikuwa mnataka aweke
hapo kando. It's just a screen, ana side moja anasikiza muziki.
Sunny, I tried.
And then the other side anasikiza one
Sunny
show.
uanguke nayo.
Yeah,
I tried.
Now, Sunny, I'm challenging you to challenge the people of North Carolina to come to the IMF protest that's happening on the 20th of July, next Saturday. It's only a 5-hour drive.
It's what day?
Saturday, 12:30 to 3:30 p.m.
Next Saturday.
Yes, next Saturday.
And hakuna heat wave?
Hakuna heat wave.
Hakuna heat wave,
So DJ Sunny Sistuki, kama mtachukua kombi ama kama mtachukua Nissan, it's just a one-day affair. Come
Perfect combi.
Yes, and then there's Swahili Village is not too far from there. Kama mnataka kwenda huko, like after that Swahili Village DC.
They can andamana to Swahili Village.
People can andamana. Yeah, people can andamana, and go to Swahili Village after that. So please, yeah, Nasani, I'm also gonna put you on the spot again. Nitakutumia flyer yetu please share it on your profile. If you can't make it, we know you are busy DJ, umekuwa celeb squeezy, umefika ile level ingine, but please share it on your social media pages. We'll be very appreciative of that, because our tuote on the path from North Carolina all the way to DC, Kinamika, Katikati, Richmond, and all these other cities. I'm sure there are many people who want to come for that mandamano that's going to be at the IMF.
And by the way, you have Amtrak and Megabus. If you want to come into DC, those two
yes,
modes.
Amtrak and Megabus, very good modes of coming to DC, especially pia watu all the way from Delaware. That's a very cost-effective way of coming to DC. Now, I have a Kinyodo here says, is asking, lakini kwa nini tulipe? Si reparation bado hatujapata ama namna gani watunguyas? I think this was in response to that pay bill comment. And then Rasvik is keeping it simple. Ruto must go. Keeping it simple. Udi Madhengi, karibu sana. Udi anasema we need to do what Burkina Faso has done. Yes, and Burkina Faso is also moving at a very high speed. I think we also need to pay attention to what they're doing with their leader, Ibrahima Traore. And then I can see here Stephen Batty from Sambaza Podcast says, me the day circa 1998, I had the Denmark envoy complain that they're not getting contracts from Kenya as they are being sourced elsewhere is the day I knew these people, Muzungu, want a stake in our country. That, of course, is no secret. And then Steve Gitao, karibu sana. Steve Gitao says, it does, but we borrow to pay debt and pay salaries, going against the constitution. This is what's causing our debt to balloon. And that's where I was asking, does IMF have a way of ring fencing or forcing us to use the money for certain things? But we'll talk about that later. DJ Sani Sistuki says, I'll do better. So I don't know whether he's saying he'll do better in terms of watching the show while DJing, or if he'll do better in terms of like making sure that he comes for the protest next Saturday at IMF HQ2 Pennsylvania Avenue in DC with Mbogia watu wa North Carolina.
And I wanted to say regarding the protest this weekend. You asked the question, and the second part of the question was, why should Kenyans in the diaspora care, and why should they be involved? We are the only population of Kenyans who have this leverage point. I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, but I can.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
The IMF, by the way, we released our poster should be about 48 hours ago. Within 24 hours, and these people have been quiet on this issue since it started. The last statement from the IMF on Kenya, I was just checking on their website, was about the structure of the loans that they had been imposing on Kenya, the structural adjustment programs and the agreements that were signed. That was the last communique. We released this poster on social media, letting Kenyans know that we are tunaenda kuwasalamia, sindio?
Correct.
Within, I think, 12 hours, a statement was read by a very, coy and what looked like a very confused press person, saying that they cared about what had happened in Kenya and they were concerned about the families, and they were their purpose is to work with the Kenya government for economic stability and sustainable growth, whatever that, they kind of just use that kind of jargon. They also released a public statement and created an FAQ page. So Kenyans who are in the diaspora, if you're close to DC, if you're 2-3 hours away, please come, because the numbers make a difference. It makes a difference when they see that we are people who actually care about what they're doing, but we also care about our country. The only way for us to assert our sovereignty, even this far, is to actually show up when our country needs us. Remember that the young people, our young brothers, our younger cousins, our younger siblings who are out on the streets are facing odds like we can't even imagine. They're standing in the line of fire.
They're being shot.
They're being shot at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you to just come on that day and put a stake on the ground and say this is not acceptable for our country is really important. So please, be there or be square.
Yes, so that's going to be Saturday, July the 20th, 12:30 to 3:30, IMF HQ2. I think the address is 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue. An easy way to remember is that the White House is on 1800 Pennsylvania Avenue. So it's also going to be a good tourism day. You know, unaweza kuja asubuhi ufanye tourism kidogo, by 12:30 unakuja hapo protest, you know, like we do what we have to do on the protest like we've been doing in the previous protests, and then after 3:30 people break away, and you can go to Swahili Village, it's right there, and you can continue touring DC. Sunset, I think, is around 8:30 p.m. So it's gonna be a very good day, you know, because at the end of the day, one thing that I like about Kenyans back home and over here, even in the worst moments, we still find humor, we still find joy, you'll still find people singing, you'll still find people dancing, even in the worst of moments when we are facing, you know, like an enemy that's killing us, that's abducting us, that's doing all kinds of things. And this is happening to people back home. Out here, I know people are scared. Oh my God, staki sura yangu ionekane Citizen ama sura yangu ionekane NTV. So you're scared of sura yako kuonekana Citizen or NTV.
Na kuna vijana
who are being shot.
Correct.
They're being abducted.
Killed. They're being abducted.
Yes.
And these guys are still going out. So I think this is one of those moments, this is one of those historical moments where your kids will ask you, where were you when this was happening? And your grandkids, they will be asking you. And you know, you remember those lies we used to be told by, you know, like people in the older generation that I always used to be number one on Nini? Guess what? Nowadays it's digital footprints. You will not be able to lie to your grandkids or your children, you know. So when people were being killed, you know, like, what were you doing? I know you were here, but what exactly were you doing? That's a question that you will have to deal with, because this is a historical moment. Whatever way, shape or form you want to look at this is a historical moment. You know, our first moment in history was 1963, when we got independence after violent uprising from the Mau Mau and other groups that were fighting them colony. Then our second uprising was in 1990 with Saba Saba. You know, like, that was the second revolution. That's what gave way to multi-partyism. Before that, you know, like, for the people who are not there, you could not even speak against the president. You could not even say anything.
Ulikuwa lazima kwenda kitabu ya KANU.
Ulikuwa lazima, you are a KANU Life member. You know, like, everyone was a KANU Life member. You're not allowed to form any other political party. Quick deviation of the story to show you how things were bad. When I was in standard 5, I was 11 years old. And my mother reminds me this story until today. She was called to school. For those who know, I attended Moi School. It was Moi Educational Center in the Nairobi West South Sea area. So my mother was called to school because I wrote an essay, what was called a composition, against Moi.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I was 11 years old.
Terroristic characters.
I was 11 years old, and my mother was called to school.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, like, when she was called, I was put in some kind of execution panel, because there were teachers who were surrounding me, plus the headmaster. At that time, I can't remember, it wasn't Mr. Ketera, I think it was Mr. Morioki, that surrounded me, and they were trying to...
Staff room ama kwa office?
No, it was in the headmaster's office. This was very serious.
Ish.
Yeah, this was very serious. So they had surrounded me, and they were asking, you know, like, where exactly is this kid getting these ideas from? So I think it was a mixture of concern, and also the fact that even those teachers themselves were in fear, because this was Moi School.
Correct.
This was Moi School. He used to drive by and give us free orbits from wherever, you know, like, he was coming from. We were a private school, but we used to get maziwa ya nyayo. So there was
na biscuit.
So there was
a
issue.
palpable fear.
Yes, so there was a palpable fear. So now, as thinking as a grown-up, there was a palpable fear. But then, you know, like, I survived, you know, like, that execution panel. But now going back later to think about it, because my mother has been always very apolitical. So she wasn't so clearly, and even some teachers knew her, so clearly they knew it wasn't my mother. But when now going back and remembering, I used to read for my grandmother the newspaper, the one in Swa, and the one in English. Yeah, and the one in English, she would select, my grandmother did not speak any English, so she would select, you know, like, like a picture she likes and tell me, okay, so your story, tell me what it's talking about. Now, little did I not know that at the time, because those days the newspapers, my goodness, they were so juicy. They had like some very, very serious stories, like the deep investigative
Standard,
stories.
Daily Nation,
Ouko Inquiry,
Kenya Times.
Nanini. So I was accumulating that information without my knowledge. Kenya Times ilikuwa ya gava.
Yeah, but those were the papers then.
Yeah, those were the
those
papers
only
then.
papers.
But Nation, Standard, Taifa Leo, they had some
Now
very serious
weekly
stories.
review.
Yes, they had some very serious stories, which is where I started getting, like I was reading these op-eds against President Moi, and I think those are the things that made, I can't remember what the composition was about, but my
life and times as a dissident.
Yeah, and that's how dangerous. That's just how dangerous things were. So I was just coming to that point that this was the second liberation.
Yeah.
Things were that bad that even as a child,
yeah.
Yes.
you could be, something could happen to you.
But
just
Ali,
because you said
that was
something.
dangerous. You
was
see
dangerous.
you see when mom was being called in.
Yeah.
It's that one of they want to know, well, who have you been hanging around, and are these people influencing you?
Yes.
And those are the people they need to go after so they
Yes.
can save their jobs. Because
Yes.
they're in Moi school
Yes, I remember in that
and
same
very
school,
highly paid.
in that same school, I was punished for what we used to go, like when Moi would drive by Langata Road, school would stop,
And you go
and then
to
we'd be
the
given
gate.
flags.
Yeah, you go to
no,
the gate.
not to the gate, all the way to Langata Road, and we would be given flags. Yeah, school would stop, would be given flags to wave. I remember the particular time I was punished, the Romanian president had come to Kenya. Remember, Romania had a dictator called Nicolae Ceausescu.
Correct.
We're going to, and this is where Moi also learned some of his tactics. Yeah, so this guy had come to Kenya. So guess what? They also gave us Romanian paper flags. So hata Romanian president anapita anaona, watoto wa Kenya, they love Romania. But now we've been forced to come out. So Mimi, at that point, I already felt like there was something wrong with this. So Mimi nilikuwa sipepe hizo flags. Kumbe there was a teacher who was looking
and seeing.
and writing down names.
Monitor.
Because we're supposed to prepare those flags like
And
a
smile,
problem and smile and be happy. Me, I was like, Apana, why are we preparing these flags? Kwanza Romanian flag, I remember it had some similar colors to like kind of like the German flag. But I'm like, what is this flag? Why are we preparing? But but those ones were dealt with in school. Hiyo madhea kuitwa. Hizo tulikuwa tunapanishiwa to school. And I remember I was also once punished for the two-finger salute. That was very dangerous. I was a kid and I did not know.
Rebel. This guy was a rebel.
I had no idea. That's Moi
Rebel
Educational
Nairobi
Center.
West.
In fact, anyone who went to Moi Educational Center, one day I will do an expose about how that school was built with corruption money. Because this is the season for revelation.
Yeah.
Gen Zs wamefungwa gates. That school
Kila mtu afungue roho sasa.
That school was financed by proceeds.
Anguka nayo.
It was financed by proceeds from corruption, and it's there. It's a good school, but it was financed by proceeds from corruption. We used to have prisoners from Langata come and do, like
Cut the
slash
grass.
grass.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, but that's right there.
Free labor.
That is corruption. Teachers were poached from public schools. They were poached from public schools and brought there. I remember we had a CRE teacher, I'm not going to mention the name, tutabana jina lake kwa sasa, but she was promoted from being a CRE teacher to the central bank. How does that happen? CRE teacher to central bank.
Did she have hips?
Yeah. How does that happen?
What year was this?
No, we're not going to mention that. Iyo tutabana iyo hapo. Let's get back to the story. What I was talking about is the revolution that we are right now. This is the third revolution. And I think I want people to understand that we are in a historical turning point. So don't second guess, if you're free next Saturday, if you've been second guessing, the first, the second protest, this is the one we want you to come for. Don't worry about being seen on TV. The more of us that are seen on TV, the better it is for everyone. Like someone in Kenya was actually telling me, some member of parliament, we're not going to mention his name, because that person told me in confidence that some member of parliament in Kenya was asking who I am, and this goes to show you that we're out here in the diaspora supporting what's happening on the ground, but these lazy members of parliament who've been bought and voted yes are concerned that this thing has gone global. It's of course across the country, but it's gone global too.
The other thing I want to also point out to Kenyans in the diaspora is that this president has invested a lot in his global credentials. If you've been observing
Image.
him over the last couple of years, you know, he was mostly a local leader, but then when he started gunning for the presidency, he came to the US, here in DC. There's like, you know, pockets of people here
Correct.
who support him. He was invited to Chatham House, gave a speech there. And then almost immediately after he became president, he started doing this wild tour of the world.
Global tour, yeah.
I think in the last 2 years, I hear he has gone over to what 60 countries, trying to build this image of a global, leader.
International leader.
And Gen Zs have stripped the emperor naked in front of the world to kind of show the world and remind the world who this person really is. Now, if we don't support them, given the odds that they're facing, I think it will be a big shame. And as you're saying, this is a moment in history that we can't ignore. This is a moment in history that's going to be talked about. In fact, Raila Amolo Odinga himself said that even during our most radical, even during our most fierce, during previous revolutions, think about like Mau Mau.
Yes.
What generation of Kenyans have actually stormed Parliament building?
None. This was the first one.
Without hesitation.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Without hesitation. And even after guns were drawn, bullets were being fired,
Yes,
snipers
live
were,
bullets, yes.
were waiting for them. These young people
kept moving forward.
They kept moving forward, and they asserted their constitutional right.
Yes. Unomike, you're
So-
gonna read some of the comments because comments zangu hapa zimepotea from the last comment that I read. I can't remember.
Wacha nisalimie watu wa
Yeah.
nini
Hebu
YouTube
salimia
hapa.
watu wa YouTube and
What?
then Unomike.
Jodo ameongea mbaya huko.
Wacha niongee tu hapa, tutaingia huko. Stephen Okoth, Udi, Amos Omayo, Anet Karanja, Lino Gondi, karibuni. Some of those comments over there have, I guess, been overtaken by events. Lakini tuendelee. Let's go back to Facebook.
Okay, Unomike, you know, there's a Facebook comments.
There's a nani over here. Evans Marube has actually suggested something interesting. Can you as well reach on X space for the IMF protest? There's a big audience of Kenyan diaspora Gen Zs there.
Okay, yeah.
Point
Yeah.
to note.
Yes, point to note.
If you can have a next space about July 20th.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. That's
yeah,
something
that's a
we'll
really
do,
good
and I
idea.
think we'll just look for a host, you know, like who's popular on X, and try to go there and co-host with them.
Thank you Washeke for pointing that out. Stephen JJ says yes, I remember hata mimi nilikuwa hiyo squad ya kuenda Langata Road na mabendera.
Yep.
School stops munaweka frontline mazee na
Yes,
na bendera.
yes, dictatorship.
Washeke says yes, and this is true. Ali was radicalized kitambo. Karibu sana Udi.
I've never been radical.
Udi has moved from YouTube to FB.
Udi alihepa.
Yeah,
He wants his
I
fan
don't know
badge
if those were austerity measures that he was talking about hapo juu ya gari.
to live and die in LA. Langata. Anyway, CRE teacher to Central Bank, Ali Badawi. That's a juicy expose. Jonas McClout, it's time for ICC to dust up Ruto files and add Mukuru massacre. Evans Marube and Jodo Molo, don't mistake what I said. Ruto was creating clout around the world. What is mbaya about saying that?
Bado ni kuongea mbaya juu ya Ruto.
Oh,
Which is allowed.
okay.
now also I wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not a point of correction, but I think we could say point of correction, and this was pertaining to the land issue, because initially it shocked. It was floating around until Alice Wahome went on to Spice, the then Cabinet Secretary for Land, to clarify that freehold land was not going to be
Affected.
Affected, yeah.
All they wanted to do was just the idea was you're enjoying the amenities of taxpayers.
Correct.
All they wanted you to do was to chip in.
Yeah.
But in no way was land going to be your land was going to, and she clarified that.
But she was talking about freehold folks in
urban cities,
in urban
areas.
So
like in Nairobi,
so not Ali's Magadi,
no.
not Ali's Magadi that he can
And
take
then
pictures from.
another thing
not
is that
that.
in that land, another issue that most people don't usually talk about is there was a clause whereby they were saying that in that land, if right now we went to Omosh or Ushago, and we were digging, and then Omosh Ushago decided to squat oil out, that was government property.
Yeah, in fact, but
So that is what the issue they were trying to need. There's usually this like way whereby you get rights to it, but what they were trying to do is they were trying to take away rights from the land. Any resources that are coming from the land, the rights was going to be going away from you completely. Not that share where it is right now. There's a share where yes, it's government. The government is going to do, but you're gonna get like you are going to get rich out of the minerals because they're in your land. So them they wanted that the land is yours, the minerals are ours.
The other thing I want to the other thing I want to point out, and I appreciate the comment. You remember this story about a guy who was in a tent in the desert, and he had a camel that was also cold, and then the camel asked to put its nose, then its ears, then its head. Then by the end of the evening, he was outside and the camel was outside.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So this is how governments operate. This is how they actually introduce legislation or introduce policies. They were not going to go all out in the finance bill. I think a couple of mistakes were made there because too much was put on the plate. But the reason I'm saying that is, take the land issue, for example. Yes, it is true they came back and clarified that no, it's not for ancestral land and freehold land, it's just for municipal land. Ultimately, what they were trying to do is to create a system of liens. A system of liens where government can tax your land, whether it's freehold or leasehold or land that is within or without from a municipality. Ultimately, that's what they're trying to create. They're trying to create a system, and the way you do it is you do it progressively. You introduce one thing this year, and then the next year you introduce something else, and then 10 years down the line, you know, you've boiled this frog so slowly, people don't even realize that there was something significant change until you're losing your land. So the system of liens, the way it works, government taxes your land. If you don't pay the taxes or you don't put it to productive use, they come and they repossess it, right? That's essentially what they were trying to do. So whatever clarifications they gave, yeah, maybe it's true. However, the intent...
I think those clarifications came about because people started crying foul because they read into the stuff.
And Gen Zs, you know, credit to Gen Zs.
Correct.
They didn't just see what was happening today, but they've been able to articulate what is going to happen in the future and what it means not just for them, but for future generations.
Correct.
That's why they're out on the streets and fighting.
Oh my goodness.
And then another thing that I liked about is that they started putting more emphasis. They realized, so if it's this finance bill, that's the problem. What about all these other proposed bills? And they started looking into all the other proposed bills. And guess what? In every bill, they're finding an issue. Every bill, they're finding an issue.
So the example,
it's major issues.
The example we gave earlier of budgeted corruption, unless you are able to see the connection between not just the finance bill, but the conflict of interests, right? Unless you can see the connection that they are budgeting this first dark money and then over budgeting for not just collections, but then for applications to government agencies, then knowing that on the tail end, they're creating another legislation to kind of create the siphon, right? Unless you're able to see those connections, you're going to just kind of endorse it. And by the way, these structural adjustment programs are being implemented across Africa. Apparently, I don't know the details, but apparently Tanzanians have been paying this kind of massive debts for the last 2 years, and they have not complained. Ghana have been doing it, I think, for even a longer time than that.
Yeah, Ghana been
but Ghana defaulted.
Yeah, Ghana defaulted. Ghana defaulted. Bondholders were forced to take a haircut, and by a haircut meaning you're forced to take
37%. I think
you're forced to take sometimes even less than the face value of the bond that you paid for it, or you're told to wait. Maybe you're in retirement, you want to cash your money on Ambwapana, wait for another 10 years.
You wait until we tell you when there's money.
Yeah, so that's interesting because there's the Ghana situation, there's Tanzania also going through their own situation. Mozambique, they were able to successfully take to court a case of odious debt. Odious debt is debt that has been procured, but it's not in the books.
It's not on the books.
Yeah, think about it like Amex is sending you a bill for $5,000 that you bought a watch, but you never bought a watch. So you're like, why am I paying for something that I never bought? Which Kenya has been paying debt, and that's one of the reasons why one of the things that is being called for is a debt audit, because once that debt audit is done, ndio mambo itachemka. people think that things are bad right now. Once that debt audit is properly done and it's known, because Kenya currently owes 11, maybe close to 12 trillion dollars, and
Kenya
it is said, Kenya shillings, not dollars, and it is said a good chunk of that is odious debt, meaning it's debt that was, that was not procured, or it's not known. There's no record of what it was used for.
So Jimmy Wanjigi was on Spice. He was being interviewed, and he gave a breakdown of the $2 billion Eurobond that was procured. You're supposed to be able, so like he was mentioning, once you get debt, it's supposed to go into that consolidated fund, because it's supposed to be for development.
The money is supposed to go in that one bank account.
That one bank account. It's one, and it is known.
And it has control, not just by Parliament, but the Auditor General.
No, so he's the guy who sees it. He
sees it and knows.
So the two
anaona pesa inaingia.
So there's 1 billion that never made it.
It just
and so he was giving examples of how it's supposed to be, because you're supposed to be able to trace how the money flows into the account. The funny thing is that money, $1 billion of that money, it's redacted. The way it's supposed to be flowing, the way it's supposed to be going, it's redacted. The other 1 billion, there's 1 billion, actually 1.8. So it was 2 billion, another 8 from JP Morgan Chase, and then 8 billion came, I think, from Citibank or whatever. So 1.8 can be traced. 1 billion,
and
that is the odious debt.
And then there's also another there's also another angle to this. So Gen Z is just I picked this off the internet, but they give this kind of plan on how these reforms that they're demanding are going to be implemented. Number 22 of those demands are that they conduct and publish an e-citizen platform revenue audit report. So I was looking at that, and I remembered something I came across years back while I did some consulting work for government. So e-citizen is it's not tax based. You're not taxing citizens. You're collecting fees, right?
Correct.
You're collecting fees from for government services. There's an additional fee that's a service fee, 50 shillings. If you do any transactions today on
e-citizen,
right? There's a fee that's applied. It's not even statutory. It's just a transaction fee.
Yeah.
Okay.
When that fee was audited, every transaction there's a 50 shilling fee, and mind you, now there's like thousands and thousands of government services online.
Correct.
These are millions, billions of Kenya shillings that are being collected through this kind of channels. County governments are also doing the same thing, right? County governments also have their own systems. If you remember, those of you who live in Nairobi, it was so bad that these fees were being collected and disappearing into people's individual accounts. In fact, there was a point in time where the e-citizen account was a personal account. It was going to someone's account.
Wow.
It was going into someone's account.
Yeah.
So money that's being collected that's supposed to actually pay debt, give government services, kind of just falls to the crack in people's pockets.
Okay. A couple of comments here. Stephen Bati Sambaza says that land issue is a big problem. All land is government property. One mic, please. This is huge. CO small exat. And then Washeke says that system of liens on land was an avenue for politicians to grab land. Stephen Bati says mimi hii land bill nitaanguka nayo. And then I see Washeke here saying the debt audit is being done line by line on X. I have a award from Africans for Mental Health says shout out to LSK President Faith Odhiambo and all the members of LSK because and they held the Citizens Assembly via X. Worth a listen. Yes, the X, the talk, the space on Faith Odhiambo's page, it was nothing but fire. And then I have Evans Marube here says, by the way, what happened to Meg Whitman, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, kwani alicheza Ruto after state visit? And as you've noticed, she's nowhere to be seen. She's not made any public statement. We don't even know that.
She's nowhere to be seen because she knows people are after her blood. Let's not pretend like she didn't try to... it's a win for an ambassador when you get a president to come home and sign a lot of deals whereby you sign a lot of deals. Like when the deal between Ruto and Biden was supposed to be a very good thing for this ambassador. It was supposed to be something that it was supposed to be a success, right? And we have people who speak and say on Twitter that there were reports whereby even when, or stories about the finance bill, that there was going to be just a little, like intelligence, IMF intelligently had told, that advised the Kenyan president that, there's going to be protests, but it's going to be just a small, mild protest and it's going to go. That is why they were so arrogant about it in the first time, in the first, the day after the first protest. Then the second one, they were scared. Then when Parliament was occupied is when they realized, oh, it's not like we assumed it's going to be. The thing for me is this ambassador, we've had Kenyans complaining about her in all sense. First of all, they're saying appointments, the number of appointments booked and the number of visas that are denied, or visas, appointment books and visas accepted, doesn't match at all. And Kenyans are saying the visa fee is going up every year, and they're saying, if you know you're not going to give us the visas, refund part of it, because some people are selling property, land, cows, and everything to apply for these visa fees. So it's like the embassy has become a cash cow, and Kenyans are mad about it. And then when the president goes for a trip, comes to your country, comes back with all these deals that don't really benefit anybody, and they really, man, Ruto gave a lot for so little.
But that has been his foreign policy.
Even
right?
the trade deal was put away. The trade deal that we could have come out with a lot was put away, and Dude gave a lot for peanuts.
Mm-hmm. And now we are in the situation that we are in. But anyway, I want us to take a bit of a different trajectory here, Dr. Wangusi. Now, given the current situation, we already know the cabinet has been dissolved. The Inspector General of Police has resigned. And as per the televised handshake moment earlier this week, the president has signed the law to reconstitute IEBC. Now, in your view, what does the president have to do next to calm the country down? Because all these things is done so far, there's still no calm. Like, what is it that if you're one of his advisors, and I don't mean those ones who make the billions, if you're just one of the genuine advisors, what would you be telling him to now do within like the next few weeks or the next month to get things calmed down?
Yeah, you're right. So he's trying to give the public token actions, and they're saying that it's not enough, because these are problems that have been festering for a long time. And he's going to have to dig very deep to be able to placate the public. So, he had a choice, and I've been thinking a lot about, like, if I was in his shoes, what would I have done? So I wake up and I'm called by my security chiefs, and I'm told, hey, there's a discontent in the streets. There's kids on the street. They're protesting. They're calling for your resignation. What would I have done as a president? What would I have done as a president? And, given that he painted or he modeled himself as the people's president or a hustler, I'm one of you. I'm one of you. Just imagine if President Ruto, at the moment when these kids came at the gates of Parliament, he let them in. And he told them, yes, this democracy, this country belongs to you, this parliament belongs to you. In fact, my SG, I'm a loyal member of the ODM party, my SG, Edwin Sifuna, when the Gen Zs came at the gates of Parliament, he was telling the security officers, one, put your guns down, and two, let them in. This is their house. That is the whole idea of democracy. What would he have had instead of killing these young people, to have actually given them?
He actually went and
because that is what they were not asking to depose him. They were asking to be listened to. Correct. So what if he had done that? What a moment it would have been, not just for the country, but for him as a leader. But instead, what did he do? First, he went underground. So it revealed a side of his personality we didn't even know existed. We've always kind of understood William Ruto has this larger-than-life, very bold personality.
Mm-hmm.
And when his people come to ask him questions about the promises that he made, he runs and hides. We saw helicopters kind of flying out of State House. You know, God knows if it was, you know, going to hide his family. And he didn't, for the whole day, he did nothing. And those were really, really important moments in the country's history.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the day, instead of coming out and saying, "My people, I have heard you," he demonizes the youth,
Treasonous criminals.
calling the young people treasonous criminals. In other words, all of us, even us who are organizing constitutional and legal protests in the diaspora,
Yeah.
are now treasonous criminals. I have to be afraid even to think about like going home, because you're thinking, am I going to be hauled off in the airport and then kind of disappear with, you know, with a hood over my head, right? He calls us treasonous criminals. At that moment, Kenyans knew who their president was. He looked scared of the people, but he also revealed the inner him. Then after calm kind of prevailed, he makes decisions to now start to like respond to the actual demands.
Yeah.
And what he has basically done is lip service. Okay, you've
Dissolved
dissolved the cabinet.
Yeah.
I have a list here of government agencies. These are 39 government agencies: head of civil service, Kenyan, Kenya Power, Kenya Pipeline, you know, the Agricultural and Food Authority chair, Kenya Seed Company, Kenya Space Agency, Kenya Post Office Savings Bank. I would not bring this list if I hadn't actually checked that it was legit. Every one of these people, 40 government agencies, are headed by people from one community. And lo and behold, these people are from the same community as the president. What does that tell you? It tells you that he's using the Kenyan government as a cash cow. Back to the question about budgeted corruption. Because all these government agencies are going to have what? Contracts. Supply contracts.
Yes.
Then this kind of little outfits that are associated with him and his family.
So you're saying he put them in for
What other reason? I mean, like,
so it's not community service. I'm just asking.
it is
for
not community
like-
service. So the next thing he needs to do,
Sorry.
this tribal government that he has created needs to be reformed. I would suggest tomorrow, after he's done, you know, after the dust has settled on the cabinet, he goes and also
releases
them.
the parastatal and
if he's
agency heads.
gonna do what he said he's going to do, which is create a
And be
broad
transparent.
and be transparent about it, because you cannot lie to Kenyans anymore.
Wow.
You cannot hoodwink the public anymore.
Okay, so let me ask a question. So if he gets rid of, you know, like all those tribes, those fellow tribesmen that you have on that list,
Yeah.
will this calm people down?
No, I'm not talking about, like, this is one of the things.
This is just-
There's a whole
It's the
slew of
beginning
things.
of the start.
But it's the beginning of the start. If you're going
But
to
then-
be, if you're going to tell Kenyans that you're going to create a broad-based government, let the people who head these government agencies and permeate government, let it be representative of Kenya, number one. Number two, let it be people who are qualified to do the job, so that we are not, so that we don't have this curse of like poor service delivery and money disappearing because you have incompetent people in government. Then there's the demands that Gen Zs have put in place. We are not asking for discussions.
No dialogue.
We are not asking for dialogue. We are asking for you to act. And those lists have, those things have been spelled out very clearly.
Okay. Mika had something that he wanted to add on to real quick. Mika.
No, I wanted to add on that list of where Dr. Wangusi is saying that in terms of appointments. And in appointments, he has cleared out the cabinet. You know what game Ruto plays is that most of his people, his inner people, his political appointees are going to be the cabinet. His inner people are the permanent. They're not called permanent secretaries these days. What are they called?
They're called principal
secretaries.
secretary.
They need, those are the people who need to go next. All of them. None of them should remain, because those are the people who he uses to run those ministries.
Yes.
And then in those ministries,
accounting officers. So nothing has changed, right?
In those ministries, also what needs to be happening, there needs to be a streamline of employees, because there've been a lot of hiring, like places like KRA. It's not Kenya Revenue Authorities, Kalenjin Revenue Authorities right now. Right, so that also needs to be taken care of.
Let's be careful. With no offense to the Kalenjin people, these are also Kenyans. But it is wrong. It is unjust.
It looks very,
and it is damaging to a country when you have this kind of social structures being put in government. If the government is being the word here is Kalenjinization of the nation.
Ish.
It's
won't go far.
And then another thing, Ali, one thing that this one I'll tell the president for free. Thing that he needs to realize. I know you have your boys, right? But Sudi, Zahir, Farouk need to step away from government.
Murkomen.
Murkomen.
Yeah,
those expensive watches, eh?
Yeah, Murkomen, yeah. I'm just like his boys need to step away from the government. His boys cannot be seen. Like we have videos you're seeing, the president is meeting with governors, but then we have Sudi is the one who's deciding who's talking to the president, who's not talking to the president. He's the one who's pushing people around his point. An MP telling governors what to do because he's the president boy. That's something he's supposed to do. Another thing, Mr. President, you are elected by yourself. We didn't elect your wife, we didn't elect your daughter. Your daughter addressing Kenyans, going to visit people in the hospital to speak in behalf of you, coming to address, those are things that actually anger people. Even in monarchies, you don't see that. King Charles is the king. You don't see Prince William walking around trying to talk to people unless it's an official duty. Even President Trump over here had to hire Ivanka, and Ivanka had to be seen within that position she's been hired. She wouldn't overstray or go sideways or go anything. So when you have the first family acting like the country is their own personal business, that pisses off. And then ule jamaa Murima pia na bibi yake. You can't have your wife's walking around lecturing people and trying to tell people what to do in life and how to live life. None of the previous first ladies have done that. That is why even that Gen Z came up with that skit and said that if you look at it, Baba Moi, who didn't have a first lady, took care of women issues better than these first ladies. Yeye mwenyewe alikuwa ndiye mwanaume alichunga mama na watoto kushinda first ladies wenye wako sahi. It's because your wives are so like your families are treating the country like it's their own personal business or personal playground. It was you who was hired, and you were hired under the constitution, as it's been said. You are the second arm of government, not the first one. The people are the first arm of government. So and then just put IEBC under Article 6 as it's supposed to be, and don't interfere when your friends get recalled and thrown out. You had 2 years to figure out how to do it. You used impunity and arrogance. Yeah, but if Ruto wants to finish his term, he has to do what the people are asking him.
Yeah, and I think generally there's a whole slew of things he needs to do. Reform the Electoral Boundaries Commission, restore some beneficial programs that were already in place, like Linda Mama, higher education loans. He has all these things to do. There's a laundry list, and this is in the public domain. It's very clear what needs to happen.
Okay,
the man needs to stop playing lip service with the Kenyan people.
Now, here's another thing. Because Ruto must go actually initially was just a slogan, but now it's getting really serious. It's getting very serious, and even with all these cosmetic changes that he's done for PR purposes, people are seeing through them, and Ruto must go is getting louder and louder. So what do you think, when it comes to, because of course there's IEBC is being reconstituted, questionable also how it's politicians who are going to select those commissioners. But what do you think about recalling MPs now? If this, for example, if let's say he allows this process to go and he doesn't try to interfere like how he normally does, how can this effectively be done in such a way that if he decides that he's not resigning, he's gonna stay on in office, that's gonna make him a bit less potent? How can this be done?
So the thing that Kenyans need to understand, Kenyans in the diaspora as well, is that we are all subject to the same constitution and its limitations, right? Yes, we've had our young people get onto the streets and assert their sovereignty as per the constitution. But remember, we also don't want to make the mistakes of the past. We don't want to make the same mistakes that the Arab Spring and end up in a society that's just full of turmoil. That's not going to serve our long-term interests. We want to come out of this situation with a country that functions, a country that values our constitution and understands our constitution, but also a country that is at peace with itself. So I want to make that abundantly clear. The purpose of this revolution, in my mind, is to reawaken the social consciousness of the Kenyan people, but also put our leaders on notice. So let me just make that clear. We're not trying to, we're not looking for a coup. We don't want to burn down our own home, because Kenya is our only home. How do we go about that? As you made the introduction earlier, you pointed out that I've had experience in campaigns and running for public office. I'm going to tell Kenyans here and now, it is not easy. Running for public office in Kenya, it is hostile, it is difficult, and campaigns are expensive. I'll focus on the last point, campaigns being expensive. We have leverage here in the diaspora because we control by last check, like $160 million dollars coming into the Kenyan economy. We can dictate who gets into those public offices. We have problems with our campaign financing laws, but then if we are going to actually have a legislature that's representatives of the values of Kenyans, which it isn't today. That's why these people were bought off and voted the way they were. There's going to have to be some political engagement that allows the diaspora, but also the Kenyans who are living at home, to actually get political actors in place who actually do what is in the best interest of the country. With respect to the
Dr.
president,
Wangusi, I have a question before you move on.
Yeah.
Before you move on to that, I have a question on what you just said. You made the finances of a campaign.
Yeah.
Because this is something I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
And for me, I think, what do you think is something that should be put as legislature to curb the need of making campaigns to be expensive in Kenya?
No,
do you think there should be legislature whereby voter bribing, or rather voter paying, is illegal? If you do that, you go to jail immediately.
Yeah.
And also, do you think that there should be legislature whereby any debt incurred while you're campaigning should, in fact, if there's a certain amount that comes in, you should not be allowed to continue campaigning if you reach a certain threshold?
No.
Because I believe most of corruption is brought about because people get a lot of money to campaign, and then they have to figure out how to pay that money.
They have to figure out how to pay that money back. I get the question, and I'll tell you something about the United Kingdom. They do not have a constitution, right? In Germany, elections are observed by local populations, local citizens. In places like Senegal, we just had a young person, 40-something-year-old, become the president.
Is that the Traore guy?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not Traore. Traore is that's Burkina Faso.
That's Burkina Faso.
Okay. Yeah. I think Senegal is FAI. It's called FAI. Yeah.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with laws. Kenya has really good laws, by the way. Campaign financing laws are on the books. Campaign offenses or electoral offenses are on the books. All that is there. It has to do with the values that we have as Kenyans. And that's not something that President Ruto is going to change. That is not something the executive is going to change. That is going to have to come from us. Because when you're campaigning as an ethical candidate, a professor, a teacher, and then you go and you want to campaign with young people, and you're asked, before you speak to us, you have to give us money. Right?
Or a t-shirt or bread or sijini.
Yes, we understand, these campaign materials, but there's a practice in Kenya.
Yes.
This started in the Moi era during the first multi-party election, where Kenyans were taught to monetize on campaigns, right?
It's that's what they know.
And that doesn't have to do with our politicians. That has to do with the Kenyan people. That is what needs to change. It's our value systems. We can have the best laws in the world, but they are only implemented, or they only come to life if we actually have the value systems that align to those laws.
But you know where my pushback will be on that, because I usually try to think of the layman. I mean, of course, I've not run for office like you have, but I've taken part in campaigns within Langata constituency. So I kind of know, like what happens. I know where the goons are hired from. So I'm a bit familiar with that process. Now, with people, like asking for money, because one thing that a lot of people don't know, like these people, like even in the last campaigns, they had shots for both sides, Azimio and UDA.
Yeah, you switch it based upon
you switch it based upon who's coming.
Yes.
Yeah, because some of those crowds were high.
because it's been monetized.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
been
it's a
monetized.
payday.
Yeah.
It's a payday.
It's a payday for the citizens.
So here's my pushback is that some of these people, they go out and work for a whole day, and maybe they may make nothing, or maybe they may make maybe even 2 socks a day, or even less. But here you're being told go attend a campaign event, na mtapatiwa, the event is gonna maybe last an hour and a half, mtalipwa so.
But that's the economy. You see now, that's the economy.
So these people are in desperation. Because
no, the answer to that question is no.
No, I think we're saying no because we come from a point of privilege.
No, I understand. We come from a point of
privilege. That's why we're saying no.
Let me tell you what I told my constituents in Langata.
Yeah.
I told them, we can do that. We can play that game together, right? We can make it so that if I have to come to speak to you, I'll give the money if I have it, right? I can play the game that other politicians have played. However, after this election is over, that tap runs dry. And then you are left with who you picked. And the other thing I told them is these leaders are a reflection of who you are, right? So if you're going to make that deal with the devil, then don't complain when the chickens come home to what? To roost. So the chickens have come home to roost on Kenyans because they selected a certain type of leader. What I'm trying to say here, we understand, and I sympathize with the plight of Kenyans. I understand all that, and I know it very intimately. I didn't grow up in privilege myself, right? So what needs to happen is that just like the Gen Zs have reset the country, because they are looking for who are the financiers of this organization that is driving this protest in the ground. Correct. They are looking for that, but then it's the Gen Z spirit saying, we want to take our country back. And part of taking our country back will have to happen at the ballot box. I want to say this just in terms of like what actually needs to happen. One of two things is going to happen. Either this is going to, continue and then kind of burn out, which is what I hope that, if I was in government today, that's what I would be hoping happen. If I was Ruto today, I would be saying, hey, we are just going to let it it'll just kind of burn the future.
Yeah, they'll lose the momentum.
They'll lose momentum and it'll end that way. What I hope happens is that they take this same fire to the ballot box. Because what will then happen is either you'll change the balance of power, because you need 6/7 of the, I think, 349 seats to be able to not only challenge legislation, but also actually impeach the president.
Yes.
For Ruto to go, Kenyans,
we need 2/3.
We need 2/3 of the parliament.
349.
So either in 2027, you need to make sure that you have 2/3, which is like 233 members that are favorable to you, or if we are going to do recalls, which are also very difficult because you have to get in a constituency like Langata, you have to get I think it's
a third of the registered voters.
A third
for the recall vote to be called.
50,000 people.
And it has to be equally spread within the wards.
And it needs to be equally 50% in each ward.
15% per ward.
It has to be 15% per ward. I think it's 30% overall.
Of the
30%
total
overall,
30% of the total registered voters.
And 15 from every ward.
That's very difficult.
It is a very tall order.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're talking about Ruto must go, I think it's a very good clarion call to drive the process, but the actual what needs to happen for that to happen, I want to tell Kenyans it's not going to be easy. So be prepared, not just for this battle, but for the long term more.
But now you're talking about. You see, the thing here is that what. And if you see by what they're demanding right now, I think even the Gen Zs are smart enough. They know they're not just going to tell them to go, but the Gen Zs also know that he needs a parliament to do that, and that's why the Gen Zs are asking to have the power to recall the parliamentarians, and they know with a weak parliament, he's not going to do a lot of things, and he's going to behave.
Yeah, so
And
to
that is
make him a
also
lame
something I
duck.
think he's seeing right now, and that is why you see he's trying to make all these handshakes, because he's also losing ground in some people. Some of the people are scared.
Yeah,
I'm sure some of those MPs are like telling him, "No, boss, kutoka hapa tuendelee kutoka hapa. You have to change this." And so it's okay, as you said. The Ruto must go is a good slogan, and it may not be easy to take him out, but if it allows it to tame him, and for him to try to work, and then in 2027 they punish him, then that's good. At the end of the day, what you need to do is that keep making progress, whereby we turn these leaders to turn this country around and start working for it. If you see the amount of wealth that is stolen in Kenya, Kenya doesn't need these loans.
No, we don't.
Now, back to you, Dr. Wangusi. I mean, you and Mika are talking about 2027.
Yeah.
Gen Zs are not trying to wait for 2027. You know, like that.
No, Gen Zs want to recall MPs now.
They want to do stuff now. So I mean, of course, the recall process is not easy. But you know, like when you think about it, whatever Gen Zs have achieved within the last 4 weeks,
Amazing.
was also not easy.
It was also not easy.
Yeah,
So
it was
credit
something
to
that
them.
we credit to
Definitely
them.
credit to them.
And,
Yeah.
and I know before you finish
Yeah.
your thought, I want let me just say this. The Katiba Institute had to go to court. I don't know if you had pertaining. This was about 2016, because the way the MPs had actually set up the recall was that you needed to get permission from the High Court. There's something to do with you having to get permission from the High Court in order for you to be able to process a recall. That is one. Two.
And actually, that's what's making a lot of them survive right now, because a lot of them have recall cases in the High Court.
And
now.
And the interesting thing is, I can't remember the name of the judge who actually voided that. He said that it was unconstitutional.
Yeah, it was unconstitutional.
It was unconstitutional, and it stopped there. So now it is up to Parliament to restructure the recall clause. But what they did was they restructured for the MCAs, the county governments. They restructured that one where you can be easily recalled, but they have not done anything for the MPs.
But you know, it's okay even if they don't do anything for the MPs, as long as the court has declared it unconstitutional.
It is, yes.
Even if they don't do anything to it, you know, like people can still proceed and start processing.
What I'm saying is, one of the constitutional lawyers was saying what they can do, and they're going to do. They're going to use the one for the MCA. The recall for MCAs, for the county government, because it's a copy paste.
Yeah.
Because it's all about legislature.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Wangusi.
Yeah.
Because Gen Zs are not waiting for 2027.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe a referendum might calm them, or is referendum tantamount to dialogue?
No, a referendum is not tantamount to dialogue, depending on what the referendum will be about.
Okay.
So the Gen Zs have not made any demands around
a referendum,
a constitutional change. They have not made any demands.
Yeah,
most of them are actually legislative.
Yeah.
Right. So the IEBC, these programs that had already been funded,
and just follow the existing constitution.
The finance bill. They're saying we have a good constitution. Let's just follow it.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was that thing called the NADCO report, which I think now.
That one has brought problems.
There's no Gen Z who wants to hear about that.
Yeah,
that
because
report.
of the constitution of the IEBC, because that has brought problems.
Yeah. So the NADCO report was the one that came after the dialogue following Baba's Mandamanos after elections.
Yeah.
So that's when this commission was created, and they came up with that NADCO report. And the NADCO report is kind of like a remake of what BBI was a couple of years ago. So that right there, you're saying is also, you think that that's also off the table for Gen Zs?
I think Gen Zs are saying tumeongea ya kutosha.
Yeah.
Punda ilichoka. It's not time for us to sit down and talk. It's time for us to actually take action.
Okay.
Right? And they've spelled out what those demands are very articulately, right? We don't need a referendum, or we don't need to go and discuss for then Linda Mama program to be reinstated.
Yes,
we don't need that, right?
Yeah.
For NHIF to be reformed in the way that they are proposing, that just can be done immediately, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do if you're a leader and you're being asked to implement measures that are unpopular, right? So I'm being asked to dismiss all these 40 people from my community. Oh, let's talk first. Let's sit down and talk, and then kind of create a have dialogue so that you can
commission, task
forces, and then that will also mean that the same people who are coming for those task forces are given allowances, right? So you kind of hoodwink the people. You kind of spin the wheel. But Gen Zs are saying, we want this stuff done tomorrow. And it's really interesting to see how he's struggling to like reconcile.
Harakisha.
He wants to play to the gallery, but Gen Zs are saying these cabinet secretaries need to go tomorrow. We're not going to wait. We don't want a commission to tell us these people need to go. We don't need a commission to tell us this, Kalenjinization of government institutions needs to be resolved like tomorrow. With the stroke of the pen, the same sword, he can say, these people need to go home and we need to rehire, reflecting the face of the nation, right? So all the demands that I'm looking at here, using live bullets against peaceful protesters.
Against protesters, yeah.
When we went for our protest at the Kenyan embassy, Ali, you were there, and I'm sure some of the other listeners were there. The mandate of the police when citizens assert that constitutional right is to protect them, not to confront them. And correct. Gen Zs, we're on video, they kept saying, we are peaceful. We want to make our petitions known.
Yeah.
What instead, in typical fashion, you confront them, then you start shooting at them and, blasting them with water cannons and using live bullets on live TV in front of Kenya's parliament. Like,
the bullets came after they realized when the Gen Zs realized this water cannon, we can play with it. So they started playing with it. Even they were hiking rides. Like you will see, the water cannon is carrying Gen Zs to town to go.
And that's when we went for our protest at the Kenya embassy.
Yeah,
we were protected by the Secret Service. By the Secret Service. I mean, think about that for a moment.
Yeah,
the presidential guard was sent to guard us.
Yeah,
and then we had. Remember, we had this young lady who fainted.
Yes,
we didn't even know there were 2 ambulances on standby. One from the Secret Service, one from the DC police.
They had first aid.
Yes. Yeah. They came and they took her.
And then they took care.
And
of
then
her.
on top of that, we also had a traffic police officer, and we had a sheriff from the DC police.
Yeah. So it was.
So what is so hard? Does that need a constitutional review or like discussion for us to actually like protect our young people when they want to go and talk to their parents about what is wrong with this country?
They should go to the living room.
So those are simple things for them to do. So I think the demands that Gen Z are making, I've looked at them, to detail. Making sure that the law around like corruption is actually followed. Don't hire these people. Don't keep them in government.
Yeah, integrity
issues. And then Gen Z are saying one thing.
Those are very realistic. No money. They are very realistic things to them.
They've said one thing. If you're saying there's no money in the country, you're saying money was looted. The looters are still in the country. Go after them.
Yeah,
go after
them. Yeah.
It's simple as them. It's simple as that. So the money is still here.
So I think the general
saying there's no money.
Yeah, the general message is the Ruto regime by now I know have a list of the Gen Z demands. They even went as far as giving them a timeline with target completion dates. Just follow that.
Yeah.
The country will come down.
Let
us see you firing corrupt officials.
Yeah.
Don't just take off the head of the Inspector General of Police. Show us the people who killed Kenyans.
Yes.
And let them go through due process of law. The evidence is there. We're not even. In fact, there was a documentary where they were saying, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? We're like, people were being shot on live TV globally. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
about evidence.
Yeah. So a couple of, quite a number of comments have been coming as we've been speaking here. Poleni commenters nimekuwa nikiwa neglect kidogo, but mambo ilikuwa imechemka hapa ndani ya studio. Now Doreen says Ruto was more a student, but he's forgetting these were analog days. Whatever he learned from Moi can't work in the digitized world today. Vance Marube says, true Mika, on yesterday's Standard newspaper, Murkomen built a bungalow in grabbed ICDC land with Chinese road kickbacks. Ruto is crafty, Ruto must go. Evans' father says Ruto is playing a mind game, so Ruto waited for Gen Zs to awaken him that his cabinet was rotten. A fish rots from the head, Ruto must go. Evans Marube is not playing. Now we have Stephen JJ says values from nursery school to university. Ruth Kilungu. Ruth says Kenya has really good laws and regulations on paper, but they are not enforced. And then we have Stephen Batty here saying, I think there should be a threshold with the amount of money that someone has to campaign so that we stop this issue of bribery, especially in the villages, not in the city. People are really hungry at home, and these politicians know how to use the money and bribe them. Would you refuse to take a packet of flour and walk away, and not have a meal for the evening because of some politician? That is where I strongly agree with Mika. And then Rasvik says it's not just a slogan. Zakayo is going, my friend. And then Washeke here says, telling Humphrey, remind again when we are occupying IMF. So the IMF is being occupied on Saturday, July the 20th. Saturday, July the 20th in Washington, D.C., 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue, HQ2, IMF headquarters. An easy way to remember is that the White House is at 1800 Pennsylvania Avenue. IMF HQ2 is 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. So please, and
that's next Saturday.
That's next
That's
Saturday.
this coming Saturday.
Not tomorrow, but next
Saturday.
week Saturday.
Okay.
Yes.
So see your kesho.
See you
So occasion in next week.
Next
Yeah.
Saturday.
Next week Saturday. So at our Texas, if you feel inspired, feel free to come.
Southwest or Wagana sale.
Yeah, Southwest wako na sale.
Unajua waambie kitu, wakikuja wengi, hata wakikuja wengi tunaweza ambia sani ya Kedunda.
Ndo hivyo sasa. And then Omosh has a very, very big house. All of you can fit in there. I'm already volunteering that space for you guys. And then hapa, let me see. Washeke says, let me see. Hata tulikuwa tumefika wapi?
We have been having commissions since independence, but no action.
Ngoja. I think, yeah. So,
But before that was Evans Marube says Ruto and his legislative sycophants were caught off guard.
Yeah, okay.
They didn't expect Gen Z's uproar. Ruto is reaching Rao for survival, but Gen Z's aren't buying it.
No.
It will be a tall order for Ruto.
Yeah, and then Washeke says we have been having commissions since independence, but no action. Stephen says police did the same in Dallas and Houston. I can say for a fact they had detectives helping us. The police were actually calling me to suggest options if there was no place available. They walked close to us, make sure we were safe. And then White House is 1600. It's not 1800.
1600 Pennsylvania.
Okay. I think I've been saying 1800. Poleni.
Barabara ni moja.
Yeah.
Ni WhatsApp group ndio ulitoa.
Okay.
Barabara
Yeah.
ni moja.
Yeah, kwa hivyo si mbali sana ni 1600. My bad. Yeah. My bad. And then Miss Gender White House.
Now
White House
YouTube, another YouTube comments on YouTube.
Yes.
It's only like 3. So
Still
Val says occupy IMF. Viva Gen Z's tuko pamoja kama mapaja. Or she said mapacha. I guess she must have meant mapaja.
Mapacha na mapaji.
Mapacha na mapaja.
Yes.
Twins, baby, twins.
Iko pamoja.
Yeah. I think both work.
Stephen Okot says Mika.
To which we say viva.
Yes, viva Val.
Ruto must go.
Ruto must go.
Ish, woi. And then Stephen Okot says Mika hapendi wigiji.
Okay.
In line with what he was saying. And then
Wikiji,
yes. And then mtoto wa Ruto
anasomeanga watoto wengine.
ati mtoto wa Ruto office of the first daughter. Again,
Hiyo ni
that's Stephen
upuzi.
Okoth.
Yeah.
I think that's it from YouTube.
And then
to our peoples on YouTube, Santeni, keep it up.
Yeah, Award is asking an important question. We need all DJs and promoters to come together and share the IMF protest flyer ASAP. We know you can. So Award, please tag them. Ndo isikuwe ni mimi niliwatag. Please tag them.
Kwa nini utaki kuwatag?
And we want them
Alafu,
also to be there, the local ones.
And then we also need media personalities. We need people who can report and broadcast this to the world. Because as I was saying earlier, we have a leverage point and we are taking it, right?
Yes.
But we need people who can actually disseminate this and let the world know what we're doing.
Larry Madawa should be reached out to.
Yeah.
Larry
So yeah. I mean, if you know any influencer, please tag them. And I think like we haven't shared the flyer. We're gonna start sharing the flyer on our One Mic Show page after the show. So we did not want it to, but tutaanza kushare, and I'm gonna share it in the different groups so that you can share it. You can share it wide.
And the hashtag is IMF must.
IMF must go.
Go.
Yeah.
IMF
Now,
must go.
I want to remind the listeners that you tuned into the One Mic Show, and I'm your host and producer, Ali Badawi. Of course, in studio tonight, we have DC-based environmental and social justice organizer, Dr. Nathan Wangusi. Now, Dr. Wangusi is a former parliamentary aspirant, Langata constituency, and is part of a team that's organizing another protest next Saturday, the 20th of July, at the IMF Global Headquarters in DC, 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue. He's also been doing media rounds on non-Kenyan media talking about the ongoing Gen Z revolution in Kenya. We'll shortly be talking about Azimio leader Raila Odinga's attempt at a handshake, so stay tuned for that. Our lines are open. The number to call is 202-683-4570. Press star 5 to speak. Feel free to call in. But before we continue, real quick, Dr. Wangusi, please give the details, the venue, and the timings of the protest at the IMF. Real quick,
And please, it's not 1800.
It's not 1800.
1800 ilikuwa ni White House, but White House is not 1800. Yeah,
Thank you
White
for
House
the
is 1600. Yeah, so
1600.
yeah, White House is 1600. So IMF ni 1900. But anyway, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Saturday the 20th. This coming Saturday, at 12:30 to about 3 o'clock, we'll be out there protesting at the IMF HQ2. Keep in mind that there's several IMF buildings, so keep in mind that it's the one at 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yes, and we'll be giving details about parking Nanini. The closest metro station is Farragut North,
Farragut North, yeah.
but it will be like a 12-13 minute walk. So you have to be prepared for that, or if you want to get an Uber directly, that's also an option that you can use. We're gonna, make an assessment of the parking situation. I don't know whether you guys did the recon earlier today. Is there parking around there? Is it only street parking?
There's a lot of street parking in that area. The problem is whether you'll actually find it available,
No,
because
no.
there's a lot of housing and all of that. So I would advise, if you can take public transportation,
That's the best
or
option.
if you know the DC area, because with the locals, if you know the DC area well, you can park sometimes a couple of blocks away.
Okay.
But that area has a lot of residential
properties,
meaning like apartments and things like that, because GW, the school is around that area. There's the hospital also around there. So it's
too much
finding
action.
street parking is normally difficult, because those buildings charge the residents for parking. So a lot of them on the weekends or days off or whatever it is, then they'll end up, and then again we have tourists. So just come in prepared not to find parking, and maybe Uber in or take
Okay.
public transportation and then walk.
Yeah, and then for those who are coming from out of town, you have a choice between taking the Amtrak and Megabus. So no need to drive in, just take one of the public transport options to come and represent. I want to say this about this protest and Kenyans showing up. When we have cultural events, religious events, we show up. But this time we need to show up for our country. And there's no other group of people anywhere in the world who can do what we're doing this weekend. So please be there or be square.
Yes.
I'll also say this: like, if you're coming from Baltimore, or whatever, you can just park up a green belt, green line,
and take
Yeah,
a
and take the red
metro
line
in,
and
yeah.
metro in.
Metro
I think
in,
that's
yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah,
Na
10
kwanza-
minutes is not a
Na
big
kwanza watu wa
for the
Baltimore,
walk.
I am appealing to Baltimore people.
Because that's
Please,
where the
please.
bulk of us are, right?
Yes, that's where the bulk of Kenyans are in the DMV.
Alafu
Please kujeni.
Swahili Village iko hapo karibu. So ukimaliza tunaingia na
Yeah.
tunajivinjari ndani.
So please,
Kwanza Ali has a permit. See, Ali, you have a permit. You can choma for them, nyama.
watu wa Baltimore, please, 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 I beg. Like last week, I did not attend the cookout, but nasikia yani kulikuwa kumeja.
Alafu
It was
there
more
was-
than last year, was it?
Yeah.
Or they were similar?
I think it was
Yeah.
similar.
They were
It was
just
a
about-
very hot day and
Yeah.
people still showed
Yeah,
up.
guys.
the other
Yeah.
thing to be sensitive to, and I want to just acknowledge, that not every Kenyan actually agrees with this political position.
Yes.
We know that, right?
Mhm.
Correct.
But this specific protest is unique because we are not protesting against Ruto.
It's against
or his
IMF.
government. It's the IMF which is affecting us all. It's like the rain, right? So please be there or be square.
Yes. So yes, and then and I hope this is a commitment from everyone on the One Mic show that next Saturday.
I have to check and see if I have petrol kwa gari.
Okay, that
Aline, by the way, one of the things you probably need to do is you should put the link for the announcement WhatsApp in case there are people who are listening and want to join and kind of get live updates.
You're gonna get Nigerians trying to sell IULs. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, you're talking about the link for
the WhatsApp group. So if
Oh
you
yeah,
can
you
post
can
it
control
somewhere
it.
so
Okay.
people
You
can
can always
join.
control
You
it.
can control.
Okay.
Because
You
we
can
know
control
who's
it.
coming in.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
do
even
that?
know. I don't even know whether you guys are on the. If you can just go to the WhatsApp group and post it on the comments, that would be good, so that anybody who's tuned in right now can just join the WhatsApp group to get the updates and see, like what's going on there. And then because that's where you'll find the flyers and everything else that you need for this event. And then here Stephen JJ says Omosh nini mapaja tena. And then Awar says, watu wa diaspora, can we please make the IMF flyer our profile photo? And then Stephen JJ says Larimadoa kwa Kenya ama Awar hashtag diaspora for Kenya. And then Dr. Wangusi, if you could also put a link to the social media pages. I think there's a Twitter account and also X, and there's also an Instagram account. So if you could include all that, and I'm gonna try to pin all those comments so people can see. And then I was asking for what's the social media account for the DMV chapter folks to follow. We're gonna be posting it shortly. And then personal greetings from Pablo to Ruth. And then Ruth says there's plenty.
I think we need to start charging that guy.
Yeah. Ruth says there's plenty of
Lazima ni Mluya.
Ruth says there's plenty of street parking. Ruth says there's plenty of street parking, but you might have to park 1 to 3 blocks away. So
Correct.
So be aware of that. And then Filaruma Noliza wakona tear gas. Baltimore just cut the mark from downtown to Union, then hop on the red line to 1900. So Phil, I'm assuming that's you telling us that you're coming.
I think that's what he's saying.
Yes. So we're expecting to see you there, Phil.
And there's actually even a
Saturday.
bus that runs that goes to Georgetown. That's like, I think it's $1.50 from Union Station.
Yeah. Okay. And then
not from Union Station.
Not from Union Station, from Farragut North. You can
No,
walk.
but I'm
It's
just
12
saying,
minutes.
kama
Yeah.
mtu amechukua Amtrak.
Yeah.
pale kando ya Swahili Village hapo Swahili Village ukipiga right your street hapo, like the entrance as if you're going north, then you take a right.
That's
Your
on
street,
19th and M.
there's a lot of street parking. Nimesahau jina.
Okay. Aya, sawa.
Nakwambia there's a lot of street parking and you can walk.
So
I don't know if people fear walking.
I just posted the WhatsApp chat link. So
Okay. Aya, sawa. Yeah, I'll go ahead and try to pin it. Now, Washeke here says, Alibadawi, have reached to someone out on X for co-hosting a space to amplify the IMF occupation. I will circle back once I get a response. Thank you so much, Washeke, for that. And then let me see. Evans anasema Mbogia Pie tunakuja halafu kufinish Kumalo Swahili Village. Thank you so much, Evans Marube. There is also Gidraf from Pie. So I think you need to connect with Gidraf. I'll send you his contacts. Is also I don't know what part of Pie Evans Marube you're in, because I think in a Gidraf wako side maybe a Harrisburg, Lancaster.
Not Reading?
Reading, yes, wako Reading, side ya Reading, PA. So Evans, maybe tell us what side of PA you're in, because it would be good if you guys can carpool. And then, of course, if you're coming from parts of PA like Philly, unaweza simama u collect watu wa Delaware, and then
Na watu wa Bimo.
No, before fike Bimo kuna watu wa Aberdeen kwanza. Umesahau kuna Aberdeen first. And then after Aberdeen
Aberdeen wangekuwa wameshaanza safari.
Kuna Aberdeen, kuna Have the Grace, alafu kuna
hata
Japatown.
Yeah.
Alafu kuna watu wameanza kuingia kwa WhatsApp group. Kwa hivyo
Okay. Aya, sawa. Okay, good. So that's all the details will be. And then Washeke anamwambia Phil wako na strawberry and watermelon flavored.
Tear gas.
Tear gas. Okay.
Ani waswashisha wanaongea acha nao.
Yeah, and then Pablo anasema hiyo alibadai who says Twitter. I mean me.
Inaitwa Twitter inaitwa Twitter bana.
Hii kitu inaitwa Twitter, mambo ya X is too much. Yeah, and then
because with that racist apartheid schmuck.
And then Udia anasema
Elon Musk.
And watoto can eat at McD next to Swahili Village.
Omosh was just chilling.
Yani this guy. Yani amekuja ametoa pesa kutoka mfuko yake hivyo.
Yeah.
Maze
ndio hivyo ametoa tu pesa just like that.
Akasema
just like that.
Kivyo zitengeneza nuggets.
You just ate from his plate. You just ate from Kevin Onyona's plate, but it's okay. But it's okay. Yeah, there's a place for every budget. I mean,
correct. Yeah, in that area, if you're gonna be in that area, there actually.
But my advice, if you're gonna go to Swahili Village, do the platter. It's always
the platter is
yeah. So that's where we are. And then again, let me see. I don't know. Ulikuwa umeweka link hapo kwa nini? Ulikuwa umeweka link kwa
ya WhatsApp yani?
Yeah, link ya WhatsApp ulikuwa umeweka hapa kwa comments.
I hope umekaribisha DJ Christian.
Okay. Yeah, nimeona DJ Christian hapo
babas tuned in.
Okay. I'm gonna try to find it because I'm not seeing it. Uno kama umeona hiyo WhatsApp link, please try to pin it so that people can
imeweka kwa chat.
Yeah, so mi sijaiona kwa chat but yeah.
Watu wameiona juu watu wameanza
ama what you can do, unaweza kusend kwa ile WhatsApp group yetu alafu umetuma hapo. Yeah, alafu unaenda kwa hiyo WhatsApp group hiyo ya show prep and then iweke kwa chat and pin it so that everybody will be able to join that group. And this is for the protest happening at IMF on the 20th of July, Saturday, from 12:30 to 3:30. Be there early enough, and we're gonna give more details once we get that X space to host this. Now, just a different trajectory, kidogo, Dr. Wangusi. You know, because our time is running short. You've been involved in multiple international media engagements, and you and I have done some of them together with the Haitians, for example. So maybe please talk to us about some of the media outlets you've spoken to, maybe what nationalities you've spoken to, and what are people from other countries outside Kenya asking about the ongoing revolution in Kenya? Dr. Wangusi.
So the first question I was asked at one of these interviews in Barbados.
Yeah.
What is in the water that Kenyans drink?
Okay.
Right? Because Kenyans are showing...
Kiburi. Kiburi.
Kenyans are showing a level of not just political maturity, but also boldness that is not common.
It's unprecedented.
Right? It's unprecedented anywhere in the world, right? And particularly in an African country where we know, you know, our governments don't necessarily have a very good record for human rights, respecting human rights. As you said, one of the groups of people who have been really interested in the Kenyan political space, other than, you know, our usual suspects, the Tanzanians and the countries around us, Uganda, you know, wondering, you know, what I actually learned is that other countries follow our political system even closer than some of their own, right? Our neighbors.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So most people will tell us, you know, they have something to say about our MPs and our president. But then the Haitians came into the fold when there was an announcement that they were going to send this peacekeeping police force to Haiti to help with stabilization and to deal with the gang problem there. Most Haitians, and I the first time I actually had any interaction with a Haitian regarding this was in an airport. Most of us Kenyans wear this Kenyan bracelet. First of all, that they recognize that it was a Kenyan flag meant that they now know that who we are. The response from the local population is hostile, had been hostile. So kind of it led to this discussion with a Haitian social justice movement and group that are organizing this protest, and they wanted to know, like, what do Kenyans actually think, the local population, like what do Kenyans think about what Ruto is doing in terms of like this blackface occupation of our country. And they were very relieved. Ali, you remember we had this discussion with a group from, I think it's called Komokoda.
Yeah.
And they were relieved to hear that the Kenyan people do not want it. Not even the police themselves who are going are not for it, because it bears no strategic interests for the Kenyan people other than a cash deal. Then we were called to speak on Haitian public radio. And the questions were along the lines of, we agree that the president he's kind of committed to this, and he's going to actually follow through. I want to also just point out to Kenyans that this thing happened on the same day of Maandamano. By the way, it happened on 25th July.
Yeah, when the
our sovereignty was sold on two fronts, right? To the IMF and then to the US government.
Yeah.
Our young people was blood, sweat, and
That's when we're given a non-NATO ally status.
non-NATO ally status. What
Yeah.
you know? What does
And that's
that
the same day we
matter?
landed, by the way, in Haiti.
Yeah.
That's the same day
it,
we
it,
la-
it
we
was,
landed
it
in
was a
Haiti.
coincidence.
Yeah, it
yeah.
was the same day we landed. They were pulling into Haiti, 400 chaps, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the public, they were interested to learn, like, first, what do Kenyans actually feel and think about this occupation? We want that comfort, or like assurance that this is just not, you guys are not colonizers. It's this one individual. Then I happened to visit the island of Barbados on a family visit, not a family visit, but like with family.
Yeah.
Yani ulienda vacation.
Nilikuwa naenda birthday party.
Yeah.
Nilikuwa naenda birthday
Ndio
party.
hivyo.
Yeah.
Ndio hivyo Mosh.
I
Yeah,
think
kubali tu.
we in
Kubali
the
tu,
wrong
Mosh.
WhatsApp group.
Yes, we're in the wrong
Barbados
WhatsApp
We're in the wrong
karibu.
WhatsApp group.
Yeah, ndio hivyo,
Umesikia
ndio
hivyo?
Go to Barbados for a birthday party.
Imagine.
Yeah.
WhatsApp group yetu ndio wrong.
Barbados iko hapa tu karibu. It's just off the coast of Florida.
Unasikia
Tikiti ya
vile
Barbados
unasema?
Yeah.
iko chini kuliko tikiti ya nini, hata ya New York. Ni
Umes-
hapa tu karibu.
Umesikia vile amesema?
Okay, sawa.
So
We
I
will-
ended up stranded. I actually ended up stranded
Yeah.
on that island without, watu wangu hawakufika juu hurricane ilikuwa inapita.
Oh no.
Immediately I got there.
Yeah.
Nimeingia kwa taxi. The taxi lady, it's a small island. It's like 280,000 people. Hiyo ni Langata times 2. Hata haijafika.
It's small.
It's small.
It's small. Yes.
So she immediately, she gets really excited. She's like, "Oh, you're from Kenya. What is happening? What's up with Kenyans?
Yeah, what's
what
going on?
what is
We're
going
hearing a lot of
on?
noise."
We're hearing,
Yeah.
we are really impressed that you guys can stand up and challenge the status quo, the IMF and the government. Here in Barbados, we just accept everything that is going on. And what's happening in Barbados is that you have a very similar president to Ruto.
Okay.
This lady, Motley is her name. She's a prime minister. She came in on a very popular mandate. She's very populist in the same way because she's a former prosecutor, so she knows a lot of like locals. Na anajua kuongea lugha ya wananchi.
Correct.
Unaona,
Yeah.
like Ruto
Amekuwa
hasa
kwa ground.
amekuwa chini huku akichimba.
Yes.
Then she gets to office and then she starts stamping out dissent. Barbados literally does not have an opposition bench. Out of the 30 MPs, hakuna opposition.
So ni kama Tanzania.
It has no opposition. So the
Tanzania,
opposition
what they do?
literally,
There's one or two, yeah.
the opposition ni bunge la wananchi. Can you imagine? So this taxi driver happens to be connected to bunge la wananchi, so she puts me in contact, and they have a TV station, they have
Wow.
like meetings. So I ended up speaking on that show, and the questions literally were just about mindset. What is it about Kenyans that makes you so fierce,
And yeah.
knowledgeable about your constitution, and willing to actually take risks and step up to the plate? Then, out of that discussion, I was called to another forum to speak to young people.
Wow.
Bado hapo tu Barbados.
Even you as a visitor.
Mi ni mgeni.
Now,
You had gone for a birthday.
no, he went for a
Nilikuwa
birthday party,
Yeah.
and then he got stranded,
Nikawa kama nani Robinson Crusoe.
and his people didn't come in. So due to the weather conditions, he was on the ground, but they could not get on the ground,
Then they
Okay.
couldn't come.
Okay.
and he ended up at a TV station.
Where? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
an
then
interesting.
Not
young-
one, but
so-
two.
Okay.
Then we spoke to the young people were asking the same questions, and these are very like articulate, well-informed, youth, and the country has very similar problems, right? A small country with limited resources, a lot of like crime, a lot of clampdown of opposition. Their clampdown is not as severe as ours. It's in you speak about the government, and then next thing you know, you've lost your job. see, things like that.
Yeah.
The cybercrime bill, it's a really interesting law. So apparently, the Barbadian Parliament, on the instruction of the Prime Minister, want to pass this law criminalizing insulting the president. Ati ukitukana Prime Minister ama MP, even if it's not an insult, just ati mkasirishe, just irritates them. You're liable for
The perception.
Ati mkasirishe tu, you just piss them off kidogo.
Yeah.
Yes.
$70,000 or 7 years.
Yeah. So instead of calling him Kimani
Yeah.
Mchungwa, you call him Kimani
Machungwa. Ati
Yeah.
alafu akasirike.
Yeah.
Jam.
So Ali right now would be owing about 100 and
Huyu angekuwa ndani zamani. So anyway, so what they wanted to learn.
wengi si mmoja.
Ni moja tu, wewe wacha hizo
thought it was
mika.
two people.
Yeah,
in one
walikuwa wanataka
sentence.
kujua, the thing they really wanted to know is like, what is that it factor that makes the Kenyan people fearless? And what can we learn from that? And how do we bring those lessons to bear in our own communities? So
Wow.
the point here is that what Gen Zs have done, they have put Kenyans on the map for being fierce. And it's not new. By the way, we are one of the few countries in
Correct.
the world that actually challenged the status quo in
Yeah.
the 60s. We are one of the few countries which had an armed rebellion.
An
So
armed
this
rebellion.
is in our
Mau Mau,
DNA.
yes.
This
Yes.
is in our DNA.
Yeah, it's
But
there.
I think now that the world has heard about it, and the fact that, even in the past, the Caribbeans started putting dreadlocks because of the Mau Mau, right? So it's kind of this new revolutionary spirit that's kind of permeating to the rest of the world. Now we're hearing, Ghanaians, Mozambicans, Ugandans now want to also do the same to
Yeah.
to
And
transform
we've become a case study, because I
Become
think
a
this
case
is a
study.
political science case study.
You're a good
Yeah.
case study of-
So we have, like our Jamaican listener here, Afro-Jamaican, Kaiser Soze, says, Maya is one of the best PM in the Caribbean. He's kind of disagreeing with you. She won the election in a landslide.
But I said
she's,
that, right?
she's a strong Pan-African. So I'm not sure what he's talking about. That's Afro-Jamaican.
He was paid by the opposition. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so I want to just specifically respond to that. Just like Ruto, in fact, I'm not saying what I think, because I didn't meet, I don't know Barbadian politics.
Because Ruto was also wearing counter suits. Strong Pan-African.
Strong Pan-African,
Yeah.
kind of
And then
projecting
engaging
this,
with Macron. Telling
projecting this
Macron, yeah.
image of a global leader. However, I want to tell our Jamaican brother, go and look at what she's doing domestically. Go and check what she's doing domestically. Specifically, go and read the articles about the cybercrime bill, criminalizing like freedom of speech, right? That's supposed to be encapsulated in their constitution. So I beg to differ, but what I heard in Barbados is that she has a popular mandate, but she's also very repressive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's interesting. And then I also...
So how did you get out? I'm just curious, because in a car, what were Barbados let him out? Missing him, I wouldn't have let him out.
If you have watched the Pirates of the Caribbean, there was a point in time where he was asked, "How did you get out of that island?" He says, "I whipped my belt. Nikapanda, what are they called?
Chariot.
No, turtles.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
the sea turtles. Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and they took
Got
you
out
out.
of the island. They took me out
Okay.
of the island. But I took a flight out.
All right, good.
This guy.
Like despite that, I also personally had some engagements with Haitian media. One from New York and another one local in DC, where we were on the same show with Dr. Wangusi, and it's quite interesting that that the Haitians were very interested in knowing, like what regular Kenyans think, and I think with these engagements that we've had, they're now comfortable to the fact that it's not the Kenyan people. It's just specifically the president, because they even they attended our protests.
Yeah.
We expect to see them on the IMF protest, because despite the occupation, the blackface occupation that Kenyan police force right now is in Haiti, Haiti is also experiencing issues with the IMF.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of commonalities that we have. So we do expect people from different countries to come for the protest on Saturday, the 20th of July. So no excuse, if you're a Kenyan, because people from other countries are coming.
Any advisable dress, or should you just
Kenyan
come
colors. Kenyan colors, it's gonna be it's summer, so just dress for the summer. Just come with there's usually a lot of drinking water that we have available there, but also make sure you come with some water and make sure you drink a lot of water as the day goes by.
Yeah, because it's very easy to
Yes.
fall out because of
and then also
dehydration.
and then also in addition to water, maybe some snacks. We saw some
Yeah.
people pass out because of like
Yeah.
Was it the
because of
dehydration or
the-
the lack of food or both?
maybe both.
It may have been
Yeah.
both. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
have medication,
You're doing
so-
Wanoma.
Yeah,
You're
that's
doing
true.
Can get
Wanoma.
hurt,
It was
dehydration.
good. The day was there, that sun was hot.
If
That
so-
me, luckily, I used to, they were going to demonstrate 15 minutes, mbio kwa gari 5 minutes, na kula alafu narudi tena hivi.
Aya, sawa sawa. Sasa now as we are getting to a close, you've previously run for office, Dr. Wangusi. What is it about the ongoing situation that the political class is still not getting in Kenya? You saw Azimio leader Raila Odinga earlier in the week attempt to start a handshake process. If you had access to his office in Upper Hill, what would you be telling Baba? You know, and you're also a member of the ODM party.
Yeah.
What would you be telling Baba?
So I'll tell him what other young legislators from the party told him.
Yeah.
The day after, Senator Gisheru Okech from Migori, and I believe also Senator Edwin Sifuna, went to Baba and they told him, this is not what the young people want,
Yeah.
right? And if he's going to fall in line with what the Ruto regime wants, it's a departure from what the young people are saying, right? You know, Baba he has very strong credentials, and there's no Kenyan who doesn't recognize his very significant contributions towards like human rights and multi-party democracy in Kenya. We applaud him for that, but that does not mean that he's always right. And on this specific issue, Baba is wrong. The young people are not asking you to go and speak on their behalf. They have not also asked. You're a stakeholder, and in fact, rightfully so. The country belongs to all of us. They are not also asking for any more commissions. You had BBI, you had this new process last year, NADCO. We are done with that. We know what needs to be done, and if he wants to be on the right side of history, he should stand on the side of Gen Z.
Okay.
Right.
So very simple. You should just stand on the side of Gen Z.
And he said, initially he said that Gen Z told him to sit aside
Yeah.
and let them deal with this issue. And they have dealt with it very decisively, and they've given their demands.
Yeah.
So let that happen. Then after the fact, after we are done with all these proposals to reduce the tax burden, to deal with corrupt officials that we know are still in government, to deal with police brutality, to get rid of all these people who are from the same communities in government agencies. After that, tell us about what we can do to talk.
Yeah, and I think because this thing has happened so fast, people, these are systems that people have learned over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So you don't just unlearn them, because this thing has been flipped upside down.
The script has been flipped.
It has been flipped. It's kind of like you've been a taxi driver for 30 years. You've built knowledge of the streets, without using a GPS. And then overnight, Uber pops up, like a guy from high school, or maybe a guy who's not even ever, done this business.
From a
just
different
goes-
city.
Yeah, from a different, doesn't even know the town, does a 30-minute training and can do that work more efficiently than you.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult
So
thing
they're
to
defaulting.
digest.
They're defaulting
To what they know.
To what they know.
Yes.
But they need to start paying attention to the fact that even the leadership of Gen Z. If I was Ruto's security chief, I'd go and tell him
Yeah.
the leadership of Gen Z is distributed. That's a new concept in leadership.
Yes.
There is no one person who's sitting there and giving instructions that you can go and find either to talk to or to deal with.
Yeah, and that's
You will
also
have to finish a
interesting.
whole generation if you want to do that.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I think somebody mentioned in the comments,
Yeah.
the times are different. You
Times are
cannot
very
run the Moi program today.
Yes.
You can't. And one thing that also has plagued his administration is communication. For some reason, it's like they don't know how to communicate, and they're not learning that. For example, remember the I think, and this was last year when he had the roundtable with Akina Sam Gituku, I think Abdikadir.
Ayub Abdikadir.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And they were talking about, he was trying to explain mambo of the housing levy,
Yeah.
and he was just getting pummeled. He's being asked questions, very simple questions. Is it anchored in law? Which law? He really doesn't know. He doesn't know, and that is why you're supposed to get your cabinet, your cabinet ministers to answer questions. Like now, for example, it took Alice Wahome to go and start explaining about the land issue, about the taxes and everything, and the miscommunication, misinformation. His advisor, his own advisor on matters health, is the one who was explaining, and he did a good job of explaining what SHIF was, how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
It's one thing on paper, it's good.
Yeah.
Practicality is another story. But however, it's a matter of letting the experts, your subject matter experts, handle that. He has not been. He wants to do everything.
But,
yeah.
no, but
But
I
he
think
cannot.
also part of the problem is that the communication team that he has around him, because he had been lauded for being a very good communicator, you know, like all these times during
It kind
campaigns
of
and
got,
things.
it kind of got into his
So
head.
it kind of
right?
got into his head.
Yeah.
But I think now the communication team that he moved forward with were people who are all about public relations and telling people feel good messages. But now when you're governing,
When the rubber meets the road,
when the rubber meets the road, you
Yeah.
know, that doesn't
Yeah,
work
and-
anymore.
and-
Because remember, even on that interview that he did with Linus Kaikai, Joe Ageo,
is it Linus or Linus?
Linus and Joe Ageo and
Eric Latif.
And Eric Latif.
Yes.
Remember, like what he was saying, even after everything, he still kept saying that the finance bill was good, and the problem was that his communication team was not able to communicate to people and tell them how good it is. That's what he was saying in the interview.
The other one,
But
I
then,
want to surface.
Ali, you also have to realize one thing.
Yeah.
It's that, and again, I'll say, the thing is, his arrogance and his people's arrogance is what put him here.
As I said
It doesn't
earlier,
matter.
right?
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how much how much articulate he is. It doesn't matter how much Hussein and the communication team is trying to polish and coach him on what to do. They have an arrogance in them that they will always think they were above the law. Because remember, immediately after Parliament was occupied, that statement he put out when he called people treacherous and criminals, and we had seen people being killed on TV, and him asking for, and then it was reported that he tried to get the military deployed that night, and the military said no.
And I think that's, by the way, I want to point out, just
Yeah,
allow me to interject.
one
of the
of
things that-
let me finish real
Yeah.
quick, and then I'm going to get
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
you. So you see, it's the arrogance. It's them. It's that bad governance that got into them that's put them where they are. Right now they're trying to clean it up, and it's so bad that you cannot clean it up.
Yeah.
You know, like ile ulipewa nini uchemshe chakula, umefanya imeungua mpaka imekwama kwa sufuria hata unajaribu kusugua watu wasijue aiezi. So because this one you cannot even, actually his PR team are trying by getting him into the spaces, trying to get him into you see, like even trying to do pressers, both of them, like to try to show like they're a unit of like, but it's hard. It's hard to, it's hard. Umechoma, watu wako wamechoma. There was so much bad blood on this finance bill. Like members of parliament were telling people like, mlinichagua lakini sasa nafanya kenye mdosi wangu ameniambia. Like people are telling others like, nimeiba ya kutosha, I don't need a second term.
The other thing I wanted to point out is President Ruto, he misunderstood his mandate. So, and it came with this arrogance that we're describing, because he thought he came in because he had convinced the population that he was the better candidate to
he was not dynasty.
He wasn't dynasty, basically.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
He was a new guy.
He was a new
Bottom
guy.
up.
Yeah.
Kenyans elected him specifically because they wanted these economic issues dealt with. And the arrogance that we're describing, from the kind of like lavishness that you see in cabinet, this kind of foreign trips, and if he's doing it, you can imagine what his underlings are doing.
Look at
he
it.
misunderstood his mandate.
Engineer
And
Sunday.
the Gen Zs have been trying to, what they are trying to do is to remind him that we put you in place, one, first and foremost, to protect our sovereignty, our economy, our people. And then they even came in saying things like, no Kenyan is ever going to have to worry about, being abducted and these kinds of things. And then
Extrajudicial killings.
immediately you get
Yeah.
into office, the first conflict you have, that's what you default to. So I think he misunderstood his mandate, and unless he comes back to the basics, right, and not do things like appoint his cousins in half of the government agencies, unless he comes back to the basics, I don't see his.
I wanted to echo Mika's.
Success.
I wanted to echo Mika's point when it comes to communication, because in fact, in the first place, and somebody, and I think it was Eric Latif who pointed this out, the authors of the finance bill was not the finance committee; it was Treasury.
Yes.
Those are the guys who should have been making rounds, not Kimani Kuria, not that other idiot from Mbere North, that Roku guy. Like, even the round table that they were having, and you're trying to explain the motor circulation tax, and you cannot. It should have been Professor Ndungu. Those guys are the ones who should have been making rounds to explain to the people.
They explained the bread tax was because of
diabetes. They can't do that. Oh, and by the way, one of your constituents says hello. And you're supposed to play golf with her some time back.
Aye.
Unamkumbuka?
Okay.
Umetaja jina? Yeah. I've sambaza the message. I don't know if she wanted the name.
Barbados for birthdays and now playing golf. But anyway,
are you a golfer?
Are you a dynasty?
I'm not a dynasty.
Are you a golfer?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So apparently you're supposed to play golf.
Fairfax County has a very good public golf system.
Okay.
Golfing,
Okay.
program. So in ile wananchi si ile
Still a dynasty.
So are you
Yeah,
saying that their
dynasty.
tea fees are not as expensive as other
they are
regular?
publicly owned. The golf courses are public. It's like 9 or
Okay.
10 publicly owned golf courses. So
Okay, sawa sawa.
Also, hizo ni free ama 10 bob?
ni kama tu 15 bob.
I'll just give a generic name,
Yeah.
anaitwa Njeri.
Okay.
Njeri.
Haya, sawa sawa. Okay. Haya, sawa sawa.
You might not be able to go back home. What I would suggest, that guy who brought the message, uone vile gari yako inaweza ingia. He is.
Now, another thing here, the decentralized nature of the protests back home, or the way they're being referred to as leaderless, partyless, fearless, and tribeless, and of course, this is unlike anything that we've seen before in Kenya or even across Africa. From your assessment, how long might this last before Gen Z seriously should start thinking about having a political formation for election 2027, regardless of what happens, even if they're able to take out Ruto? But how long do you think this will last, or maybe what do you think they need to start doing? Because what they're doing right now so far is working, but at what point should they start now thinking of a political formation? Or are we also, like looking from a perspective of learners, because we're also learning?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what Gen Zs ultimately want, right? It sounds to me, from many of their demands, that what they're gunning for is political power to decide the destiny of their country, right? And I'm very pragmatic in that respect, because power is not given. It's fought for and taken. And in a democracy, where that happens is at the ballot box. So ultimately, just like Saba in the past generations, and even Mau Mau, eventually they coalesced around political organizations, right? They coalesced as a political force. In the Mau Mau case, one of the big failures of Mau Mau, by the way, if you remember, is that the leadership did not transition from the struggle into political power. And a lot of them were left out of the national discourse afterwards, and that poverty has persisted.
But then there's usually that argument where, like, the revolutionaries, like, they're good at doing revolutionary work, but not necessarily.
So there's a
governing.
balance. There's a balance to be struck. Successful revolutionary movements, like, and when I say success here, is you come up with a revolutionary idea or position and then transition that into governing You know, we've seen that in Cuba. We've seen that in certain parts of the Middle East, you know, with varying levels of success. The caution here is that the Gen Zs have created a power vacuum, right? Everyone is now wondering, okay, wait, my method of governing doesn't work. You know, Ruto is firing his cabinet, so there's a power vacuum, and it's not going to stay empty. Someone has to take it. We have to make sure, by hook and crook, that space is taken by those who are representative and can speak on behalf of the Gen Z movement.
Okay.
If we don't do that, likely what is going to happen is going to not be the Saba case, but it's going to be the Mau Mau case. They're going to be locked out of power, and then these problems will persist. So personally, I think in short order, strategically, they should start to think about forming a political movement to now take those issues to the ballot box and then directly to the other arms of government.
Could they create this political movement within the same model they have of let's not call it leaderless, and I mean the word decentralized, I actually got it from you, whereby wherever there is need, you know, like unajua, so sisi Waislamu kuna hadithi inasema like whenever you're traveling, I think is it 2 or more people, even for as small a task as that, you're required to select a leader amongst, you know, like the 3 of you for that, just to accomplish that small task.
Yeah.
So I'm saying within that decentralized nature, do you think they should maybe start, you know, like looking for those leaders, for example, on demand?
Those have emerged already,
Yeah.
right? So by default of the way political protests work, there are those who will come out and be the most vocal, or those who will be targeted, or those who will come out and speak up and come out and organize, right? That has already happened. So it's not even a matter of like trying to figure out who are the leaders or who can actually take up those positions. But you already have young people who have come out and they're giving very eloquent speeches and be able to articulate the issues very kind of forcefully. So, you know, we're not saying that the movement becomes about the political actors,
Discourse,
the political actors actually. But amongst those, there has to be a political movement, because not everyone is going to become a politician. Like when you look at Saba, our previous Chief Justice Mutunga, at some point he was actually being asked to become I don't know if you remember this, but at some point he was being fronted as the front runner for the president, and he refused. He said, I am not a politician. So not everyone is going to be a politician. People are leaders in different respects, and you need people, you know, who are human rights defenders in those agencies. You need people who are good and ethical lawyers sitting in the judiciary. You need people in all arms of government. So Gen Z need to start thinking about kuchukua usukani
within that movement.
To take that, to take the reins of
because
leadership.
I think what over the years attracted all kinds of shady personalities to political spaces is the amount of money that was being, not necessarily even being earned, money that was being stolen. So I think that's what ended up attracting a lot of people, because those are the ones who ended up
they're very good at it,
are
right?
getting rich. But I think if we get a system where now, like, you can make money in the private sector, a good economic system where you can make money in the private sector, I don't think there will be that much of a thirst to want to go there. But then, of course, there are also these other people who are not necessarily part of the Gen Z movement, but have come out to defend them. For example, the LSK chair, Faith Odhiambo. You know, you have people like Okia Omtata. You know, these are figures that they can already see that even before this movement came along, these were people who are trying to talk on our behalf and articulating, you know, like some of the issues that we are asking for.
And the caution is, again, I want to just kind of end on this point. Power is not given. It's not donated. It has to be earned. And in Kenya, being a constitutional democracy, which is what we want, we don't want to leave a power vacuum where negative or this kind of unethical actors. Yeah, because mshaiona ikifanyika. See, well, Baba is a respected figure, but there was a power vacuum, and he took it. Or at least he attempted. Then came back and said, "Hey, you're not representing us." So
someone is who is we?
We, right? So we are going to have to, whether or not Gen Zs want to, either we take that power, fill that power vacuum, or someone will fill it. Right?
Wow. Yeah. And now, just coming back to the diaspora, and I know time is running out a bit.
Yeah.
These protests that we're doing here, IMF, we did tour at the Kenyan embassy. Are these things that are having any impact back home, or are we just satisfying ourselves, kujichocha tu, or maybe at what point should the diaspora, at what point should we start and should we stop so that we can align and complement this movement that's happening back home?
Yeah. So as you know, the what is happening at home is goes far beyond just kind of going on the streets, right? There's also persons who have been injured. There's legal challenges that are ongoing. I just spoke to someone at home who was telling me, bail and bond has become one of the most difficult things for the LSK to raise, right? So there's no reason why we as the diaspora should not be donating and supporting the home front in that respect. I just wanted to get that out of the way. So when we asked to give, those channels are there, they're formal. We can, if you're on the group, we'll share them. Give so that we support the home front. Do our protests have an impact? I think so, because our audience is different than the audience at home, right? It's a global audience. It brings to bear to the people who are actually driving some of these policies. So like the IMF, who else can go and protest at the HQ, the IMF HQ, than ourselves?
Yeah.
These are the people who are driving the process. And, we were kind of guessing that maybe it's something that has been originated from the Kenya office. But immediately we released the poster, they responded.
They responded, yeah.
That
it was
tell
like
you,
clockwork.
almost like a few hours after.
Because they had ignored this
They
thing.
had ignored it, hoping
Yeah.
that, their attention doesn't come to them, because that's how these financial institutions operate. And the fact that they've been challenged by a diaspora who is active, that also tells you, even the US government, we know that there were some legislators who were at Parliament when this was happening. Kenyans, by the way, call those legislators. We have the names out on our social media platforms.
Wamesalimiwa.
Tumewasalamia.
And we still need more
And we
people
still
to
need
salimia
people
them.
to call and lobby, because these are leverage points that we have. And then we have the subcommittee on Africa. What is the job of those people other than to deal with issues like, to bring to the fore to the US government what is happening? Because the US government are the ones who embrace this person. Ruto.
Yes.
They brought him, and the
They
democratic
enabled him,
leadership,
yeah.
they enabled him.
Yeah.
So they bear some level of responsibilities, and it is our responsibility to keep these people to account for that.
Okay. Now, last question. How do we avoid Arab Spring mistakes? You can see countries like, especially Libya
Yeah.
and Sudan,
Yeah.
where there was all this euphoria
And energy.
and and then it all went south.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we avoid? I know right now people are not looking at things in Kenya like that's a possibility, but how do we avoid it? Because I'm sure even in those other countries,
Yeah.
when these things were happening, people were seeing that this is an uprising, things are going to get better from here.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid that?
I think it's the transition of power. It really goes back to that discussion we had earlier about transition of power. There's going to be a power vacuum, because MPs MPs have been blacklisted, right? So there's about half of our parliament today can't even go back to their constituencies. They are being beaten up, right? So what is going to happen is either they'll not run, they'll be scared of running, or if they run, they're not going to go through, right? What will happen after that? There's going to be a power vacuum. There's already a power vacuum that has been created in the cabinet. We expect that there are going to be others. And if we don't put our foot forward to say, this power vacuum are going to be filled by good leaders, ethical leaders, people who look after our interests, the same thing is going to happen. And if once there's a struggle for power, which is what is happening in Arab Spring countries, then it spills over into like civil unrest.
You already have a member of parliament, Dadaab, Farah Maalim,
Yes, exactly.
who was quoted as saying it was a speech that he gave in his native Somali language.
Yeah.
And he was saying that this was an attempted coup, and if he was the one in charge, he would have
Scattered all 5K.
killed at least 5,000
And that has to do with the narrative, because the first thing, as we were talking about, that's a good example. But as we were saying earlier, the president tried to own the narrative and say, oh, peaceful protesters, criminals. Treasonous criminals.
Mm-hmm.
We have to own the narrative as well, right? We have to keep owning that narrative. And that also goes to say, if we have the opportunity to like get out and get our voices heard, then it allows us to do that. Because in the eyes of the international community, in the eyes of the DC community, in the eyes of the leadership here, they're going to hear about this protest. We have to own that narrative. And the way we do it is by coming out to be heard.
Aye. Uno Mike, wahenga.
Before I go, I have to say this. It has been brought to my attention that there are people who are really enjoying, they love what Omosh has done with his hair.
Okay.
Hey.
Alienda salon.
It is being said.
Yeah.
Hold
Where I'm looking.
Omosh hair looks nice.
Yeah.
Tell him we seize him.
Okay, we seize him.
We seize him.
Okay.
Na wahenga walinena kilicho na mwanzo hakina budi kuwa na mwisho. Meli imetia nanga. We are about to wrap this puppy up. Mika Och! Wakade.
Well, wengine jaisikia hii mambo yako kurap this puppy up. SPS wanakukujia. Anyway,
Umesema ti Oxford, Oxford set haina raba.
Man.
wacha tuendelee.
Okay, endelea.
Let's go back. Anyway, I want to thank Dr. Wangusi for coming to the show today, coming to join us.
Correct.
And I want to thank our penzi wachangiaji.
Yes.
Penzi wachangiaji for, kama kawaida as always say, hii ni kitu tuko kwa tunapiga story kwa WhatsApp kasi nyingi. You've been pushing us and you've been engaging us and giving us discussions, and I just want to tell people like this is a historical thing that's happening.
Sure is.
My younger brother told me the other day, enyewe wa Kenya si ni mabuli. Yaani tunabuli president wetu, anafuta cabinet, anatu-address every 2 days. Like, anatu-update, anatubembeleza. Like, no other country has ever bullied a president to that extent. Kwa Kenya. And you look at it and you realize this country has been going with the pits for so long, and it's refreshing. There's an energy that's working and fixing the nation. And no other country has ever done it like that. Even if it gets to a point whereby we'll have to wait until the ballot to fix it completely, but it's a step forward. And it's something that most people need to look at it like, at this point, it's not about which party you are, right? Baba aliambiwa kaa kando, mapia utakusalimia tukufukuze, akakimbia. Right? And so they're fixing everything. So it's up to you. If you love the nation, support them. Like us in the diaspora can come out and make noise during the protest, the protesters out here, and make a noise and get heard. We can make calls to our local legislatures and tell them what is your thought about this. Like, we have complaints, we have things we ask. We are talking about the IMF, and the people in Kenya complaining about the ambassador, they're complaining about IMF. We can talk about that. It's an election year, so you can make a lot of headway by that. We can make a lot of noise that can be heard and have an impact. And then ukitumanga $10, $20 kwa hiyo line ya LSK and the medical fund, you're going a long way in helping a lot of people who are being persecuted by the government right now. And it keeps on fueling, because the reason these kids are still fighting and doing it is because they know that we have somebody watching our back. And that is why the president is so scared. Back anaanza kusema imaginary financiers from outside the country, like wanataka kusema sijui ni foreign nini, waliekelea Russia, wakaona si Russia, walikuwa nafikiria sijui nini. Like, at the end of the day, a movement that comes from the people, you cannot fight it. You just have to respect it and do what it has to do. So if you love this country and you want it to be fixed, you can be a part of this movement. If you feel like this movement is not to you, ask yourself, when the country goes to the pit, will you be able to lift up your hand and say that
I participated in it. Back to you in the studio.
Wow.
Fire.
Yani mpaka this thing has made Mika sound like he's a poet. Thank you, Daktari Asante Sana, for making time, for coming out and explaining it for folks. And let's not forget, I know we've been saying it and we'll continue to say it, next Saturday, July 20th, we're going to be having a protest at the IMF. That's 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue from 12 midday, I think it is.
12:30
to 3:30. Parking could be shaky, so just make your way, wear your colors, comfortable shoes, comfortable attire, Kenyan colors, carry water, and as well as some snacks for yourself. Walete watoto pia, sindio?
Yes, watoto,
Yes.
especially watoto.
That's
Yes.
something we never mentioned, and
Yeah.
we'll continue to say it. Mulete watoto, don't be caught on the wrong side of history. This is historic, and it's, again, a protest at the IMF because of the policies that are retrogressive to countries that borrow money from them. This is, in fact, if this goes the way we want it to go, they may have to start looking at how they deal with countries that borrow money from them, especially African countries / nations. So, with that said, to our viewers and listeners, thank you. Have a good week. Stay safe. Ali, who do you have winning Euros?
It's coming home.
It's coming home.
It's coming home.
Wow.
You didn't know that?
Yani mumona wa koloni ndio. Okay, sawa.
No.
It's Euros. It's South African.
No, I'm just asking.
But even Spain were colony.
Me, I was not.
Mi naweza kuambia reason yangu mbona I'm coming home. My main reason number one ni Kobe Maino. Lakini on footballing terms,
Yes.
England have looked so fit, and they have Kyle Walker on the other wing.
No,
And
Saka.
the biggest weakness Spain imekuwa nayo ni crosses.
Okay.
And with Harry Kane and Bellingham, yes.
Mbona mlenga Saka? Mbona lenga Bukayo?
nasema kudili na crossi.
Okay.
Kudili na crosses,
But
and hiyo ndio imekuwa weakness ya Spain. So the thing for me is like, it's gonna be a high scoring game. It is a 3-2 ama 4-3, but England are gonna win it because just the mere fact that Spain cannot defend crosses, and England have very, very good crossers.
They've mastered that.
Saka, Foden,
They got
Shaw,
set piece
na
guys.
Walker.
Yeah.
Now Kobe Maino Maze, that boy has been huge.
Okay. So this is the part that you guys forgot. Lakini ni sawa nimewachanusha. Okay. Me, I'll go with Spain. See tutaenda Ibiza.
Kenyans ever been too busy doing a revolution, so Kenyans have not even been posting about Euros. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah, the soccer has been really on the back seat.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it's been on the back seat.
It has actually been on the back seat.
Dealing with
This is
other
one
things.
time where I'm like, wa Kenya
Yes.
kweli wameonyesha, and they felt zero.
Yes.
Wao kwa hata influencer alikuwa killed product aliambiwa tulia. Tutakuja huko siku tulia.
Wow.
Okay.
So and that's on Sunday, this Sunday. So with that said,
You forgetting
again,
Copa
I was gonna go with Copa America, but
Argentina?
see you
or Colombia?
for me, I want
Colombia.
I want James to take it.
I'm going with Colombia.
But if Colombia wakisleki, Argentina wako ndani, and it's 3-0.
Okay. Aya.
Argentina wanajua nani Messi na Di Maria wana retire, so they're playing for a purpose.
Yes. So I think they want it bad enough, but this is really Colombia's to take. They have the younger team. They're faster. They are more
Yeah,
dynamic.
Colombia are
Defensively
good.
and
They
defensively
actually
sound.
knocked out the best team in the tournament.
Yeah, they're more
They're defensively
dynamic,
sound.
but they cannot fall asleep.
So you mean Messi and Angelo Di Maria, they're not coming back for World Cup in the US?
No, they're not.
I don't know if you see, the thing is you can't front Messi at that age.
Okay.
You can't.
No,
Ule
they're not.
kijana
They're not.
anacheza.
Even- no, he-
Ule
Messi
kijana
himself said-
anacheza game ingine at another level. They can't wait on that. It's not like Portugal where Ronaldo can still pull those things. No.
Yeah.
Hata Ronaldo pia atarudi.
There's no
Ronaldo is done. Both of them are done. Like Messi himself said, like his body cannot. Anamaliza then anamaliza contract yake ya MLS and is retiring.
Well, impromptu sports segment. Dr. Wangusi, give us your last word.
Yeah, my last word to the diaspora is stay engaged. Let's support the home front. We have a very important role to play in driving the movement, making sure that the outcomes of the movement are in favor of the people. Those of us who are in the DMV area, as we said, we have specific leverage points that only we have, right? Out of the couple thousand people who live in the DMV area, we are close to the Capitol, we are close to the IMF, we are close to the White House, right? So the actors who are these adverse actors, the ambassador Meg Whitman, there's no reason why we should not go and protest.
Missing in action,
right?
Yeah,
and ask the administration to get rid of this this individual. We've made a decision that we are going to the IMF, and already, unprecedented, they gave a very detailed response and a country FAQ page, which tells you people are listening. So we have an opportunity as the diaspora to leverage our collective wisdom, but also to leverage our numbers and our strategic positions to make a difference for young people in the world. Because the more we surface what is happening, the less the risk for them in the homeland. We should support in terms of like not just giving, amplifying and retweeting, but let's put our money where our mouths are. I always say that, like, one of the big challenges of, as I was saying earlier, running for office is that you need to give money. And in this country, for instance, we know this political system works because the local Monanchi gives money to the political candidates that they want. They don't just talk or make their political positions known. They put their money where their mouths are. So let's stay engaged. Make sure you come for the protest. It's a good also networking opportunity. We always come out for cultural events, religious events, but then where matters regarding our homeland, let's show up in numbers and make our voices known. Thanks for listening. I'll make sure to come to the show again, and let's just keep this conversation going.
All right, asante sana, Dr. Wangusi. I mean, this was quite amazing. It's been, like quite a roller coaster for Kenya in the last 4 weeks, day to day. Like we've been having to keep up minute by minute. Like things have been happening on, on the ground, on the media, on X Spaces. Like there's been so much that has been happening in the last 4 weeks. Quite a historical moment. Of course, we've already done 2 protests out here in the DMV. There's other protests that have happened in other cities, New York, Dallas, Houston, LA, and so many other places that have already done protests. And I want to encourage people to keep engaged. And of course, we're going to try to connect with the organizers in the different cities. Not forgetting our protest here in the DMV in the Washington, D.C. is on Saturday, the 20th of July. It's going to be at 1900 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's IMF HQ2. So anyone who's within a 5-hour radius, I say 5 hour because that's a very drivable distance. So we are talking of North Carolina. We are talking of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware, New York, New Jersey, Philly.
Yeah.
All those cities. Please try to make your way here. And if you're driving, like your car is a 5-seater, try to find 4 people. Do not come by yourself. Try to find 4 people to fill that car, because the more we are, the bigger a statement will make and the bigger impact will be felt. Because not to overstate our importance, but it was such a wild coincidence that after we published that flyer is when IMF responded. The IMF spokesperson responded within 48 hours.
It was even shorter. I think it was like more like 12 hours. Almost immediate.
Of us first publishing the flyer. Yeah, it was within, I think, 24 hours of us first publishing the flyer. So this is so the success of this is a combination of the sum of the small parts. So don't see yourself as just one inconsequential person. You that one person, imagine 100 other people considering them that one person, and it's a sum of the parts that will make it consequential for all of us. And this is a historical moment. Other countries are watching us, and other countries are trying to calculate how can we replicate something similar. So this might be good, because if this happens across other countries in Africa, it means other economies are going to be better. We can better, like start doing business with each other, and everybody will be happy. Na kwa hayo machache, yote ambaye anataka kunipigia simu, nambari yangu bado ni ile ile 1-800 mteule. Na operator akishika simu, mwambie unataka kusema na mjukuu, na akikuuliza ni mjukuu yupi, mkumbushe ni mjukuu yule yule wa Masai, because I'm Kenyan by blood, American by design, Masai by choice. Sichagui, sikagui na sibagui. Kwaherini.
Aiden, Daddy loves you. Jerry, Daddy loves you. Nimo, Daddy loves you. Until next week, be blessed.
Iko muziki leo.
Ndio hiyo hapo.
Okay.